Teach me some manners? Leo echoed, stunned. He glanced around. The maids had closed in, forming a tight circle around him. The head maid, a woman with an unnervingly placid face, silently offered Ophelia a riding crop. Leo's eyes widened in shock. Ophelia let out a soft, musical laugh as she took the crop, her pale eyes raking over him from head to toe. A shiver ran down his spine under her increasingly intense gaze. Okay, a riding crop, he thought, his mind racing. What's next? Candles? A straitjacket? A ball gag? It's broad daylight. We're in a main hall, and there's an audience of a dozen young maids. Is she some kind of psychopath? This is next-level stuff. Ophelia, Leo began, shooting an embarrassed glance at the surrounding staff. This kind of kinky stuff between couples. Maybe we could save it for tonight. When her expression didn't change, he lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, if you're really set on a matinee, can we at least go to a bedroom? Lock the door. Keep it private. He gestured vaguely at the maids. With everyone watching, unless you're planning on a group activity. His words made several of the maids blush crimson. Ophelia just burst out laughing. Leo was more confused than ever, having no idea what she was planning. When her laughter subsided, she shot him a look of mock disgust. What is wrong with you? Is your mind capable of thinking about anything besides filth? I'm not the one being improper here, Leo insisted. I'm a perfect gentleman. And yet, he let his gaze drift back to the riding crop clutched in her hand, using a loaded phrase like teach you some manners. She had to be doing this on purpose. Ophelia scoffed. So this is my fault? The moment you see this, your mind jumps into the gutter. Does this mean you've done this sort of thing with those women back at your mansion? Don't even go there. Leo cut her off, terrified her wild accusations would send her corruption level skyrocketing again. She rolled her eyes dramatically and crossed her arms. Listening to their bizarre exchange, the head maid ducked her head, her shoulders trembling with suppressed laughter. Leo finally got a good look at her. It was the same maid whose head he'd sliced off during his first reload, the one who had kept talking. It had been too dark that night to see her clearly, so he hadn't recognized her until now. He quickly looked away, but a question surfaced in his mind. To survive decapitation, is she some kind of anomaly, too? But what was even stranger was her current demeanor. She was acting completely normal, even amused by his banter. Nothing like the stiff, eerie puppet from that night. It seemed this estate underwent some kind of bizarre transformation after dark. Night again. Oblivious to his thoughts, Ophelia clapped her hands. Another maid came forward, presenting a saddle, stirrups, and a pair of riding boots. What are you? Leo began, frowning. Carolyn was the daughter of a nobleman, Ophelia explained, her tone clipped. Starting today, she will be instructing you in the etiquette of the aristocracy. We'll begin with the most difficult part, horsemanship. Aristocratic etiquette, Leo repeated, dumbfounded. Of course, Ophelia nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Her gaze was intense, and it won't stop at horsemanship. There will be lessons on deportment and conversation, on morning and evening dress, on dining, on dancing. Well, hold on. The sheer length of her list made his head spin. Are you trying to turn me into some blue-blooded prince? I'm the son of a new money industrialist. What's the point of all these rules? What do you think? She hummed, stepping closer until she was right in front of him. Her pale, delicate hand rose to cup his cheek, and her light eyes swirled with a deep, crimson hue. I'm going to remake you. Her voice was a low, possessive whisper. From the outside in, a complete and total transformation. I'm going to make you into the most perfect man in the world. The only man worthy of me. Leo listened to her tyrannical declaration and sighed, a sense of weary resignation washing over him. And then what? We get married? Ophelia nodded. Yes. His weariness deepened. You can't honestly believe that turning me into some polished aristocrat will make me eligible to marry you. Running away together is one thing, but making me a noble? Come on. The gap between our stations is astronomical. That doesn't matter. Ophelia's voice turned to ice. Anyone who objects, I will kill. Her words were laced with pure, unadulterated menace. What about your father? Leo pressed. I will handle him, she said without hesitation. Seeing the doubt still lingering in his eyes, she added forcefully, believe me, no one can stand in my way. From the afternoon you helped me escape 4 years ago, I knew. She stared directly into his eyes, her will like steel. You are mine. That is a fact that no power in existence can ever change. The sheer force of her conviction left Leo speechless. He gave a helpless, bitter smile, a headache already forming behind his eyes. How could he have known that a simple choice made to clear a chapter objective back then would create such a massive problem for his future self? This wasn't love. This was a twisted, all-consuming obsession. Would someone who truly loved another person disregard their feelings so completely? Ophelia grabbed his hand, her grip unyielding, and pulled him out of the main hall toward the stables behind the estate. A beautiful black stallion was led over by the headmaid, Carolyn. "I know what you're thinking," Ophelia whispered, her voice a devilish murmur in his ear. "You can't escape, so stop trying. You might as well start imagining our future together." The stallion's reins were pressed into his hand. Leo looked back at her. "The first step in riding is to overcome your fear," Ophelia said with a dazzling smile. "Don't be afraid of falling. Go on, my gentleman." What else could he say? Fine. And so, with Carolyn's guidance, he placed a hesitant foot into the swinging stirrup. Watching the tense, clumsy figure in the riding ring nearly tumble off the horse several times, Ophelia's smile returned, her expression softening. The commotion in the ring startled a flock of birds, sending them scattering into the sky. Ophelia watched them fly away, her gaze distant, when the girl trapped in a thick cocoon of ice, living the numb life of a marionette, first saw the true sky. From that moment, she knew their fates would be forever entangled. Time crawled by. Leo spent the entire day learning to ride. Aside from a quick break for lunch, he was practicing constantly. It was more exhausting than a full day of classes at Blackwood. By evening, he collapsed onto a sofa in the main hall, drenched in sweat and utterly spent. Ophelia wrinkled her nose, glancing at him with disdain. "Go take a shower immediately, then go to sleep. And don't be so filthy in the future. I don't like it." "Yes, Your Highness." Leo's gaze fell on her attire. She wasn't wearing a nightgown. "I have official business to attend to. I'll see you tomorrow." "Wait." Leo reached out and caught her hand. "What is it?" She tried to pull away, her expression showing a clear distaste for his sweat-soaked state. But she stopped, waiting to hear what he had to say. "You leave every single night. It gets lonely," Leo said with a sly grin. "Why don't you stay tonight?" "Stay? And do what?" she asked, her brow furrowed. Then she saw the look on his face and rolled her eyes. "I leave because I have important things to do. You are to remain here obediently and wait for me." She trailed off, a sudden realization dawning on her. Ophelia crossed her arms, a knowing, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "What are you really asking, Leo?" He looked at her with wide, innocent eyes. "What? I just want you to stay and keep me company. Don't you want that?" "Well, I do, but—" She hesitated, not finishing the thought. Leo's expression didn't change, but inwardly, he just confirmed his suspicion. She had been lying. She didn't stay in the estate to work at night. She was leaving. A single slip of the tongue had given her away. "It's not even fully dark yet, and I doubt you have anything that can't wait," Leo said, tugging her hand and pulling her down onto the sofa beside him. "How about you just talk with me for a bit?" As he looked into her questioning pale eyes, Leo silently activated a skill in his system interface. Persuasion/pacify, master. Oh, honestly, as if her guard had dropped, she shifted slightly away from him, but did, in fact, remain on the sofa, seemingly willing to chat. Leo began recounting the events of the past few weeks, ever since he'd returned to New Haven. It had been a whirlwind of bizarre, high-stakes incidents, enough material to fill a novel. Just as he expected, Ophelia was captivated. Though she had undoubtedly received reports from her shadow guards, hearing the story from him was far more interesting. Naturally, Leo was selective with his details, glossing over his interactions with Helena and Evelyn. He skillfully steered the conversation toward the airship bombing. "I can't believe we were so close to each other then," she murmured. "Thinking back on it, it's still a little frightening. I've got thick skin. It takes more than that to kill me," Leo joked. "Were you a cat? Do you have 9 lives?" she shot back, glaring at him. "Stay away from things like that from now on. Stop investigating those cases. What's there to be afraid of? I've got divine protection. I'm blessed." Leo maintained his devil-may-care attitude. "Divine protection." Ophelia chuckled humorlessly. "What? You don't believe in the gods?" Leo asked, widening his eyes. "How could I have survived this long without a god watching over me? And look at you. You survived that explosion, too. Your ancestors must be protecting you." As he spoke, he let his gaze wander nonchalantly to an object in the center of the grand hall. Between 2 massive, sweeping corridors, where one would typically find a sculpture or a painting, stood a colossal, magnificent statue of a black dragon. Though her character profile was still incomplete, he contained her once in a previous playthrough. He remembered what was written in the race category. Kin of an elder god. The Wigner royal family were all kin to a particular elder god, and Ophelia was no exception. The imperial family had always publicly claimed to be descendants of the dragon god from ancient myths. They were the sacred dragon kin, divine avatars of a most noble deity. Legend told of the empire's founding monarch possessing mysterious and immense power, soaring through the skies on great black wings, breathing a fire that purified all evil and saved humanity from the brink of extinction, earning the cheers of a grateful populace. Logically, that elder god should be the dragon god of myth, a majestic, holy black dragon. But Leo didn't buy it for a second. Setting aside the fact that he'd read countless occult and historical texts and found the so-called ancient myths to be riddled with plot holes, blatant propaganda by the Wigner monarchy to legitimize their rule. The most important point was this. There were no damn dragons in this world. No elves, no dwarves, no orcs. This wasn't a traditional fantasy setting. It was a bizarre world teeming with unspeakable things. Even magic wasn't about wizards flinging fireballs at each other. It was about cursing your enemy to wake up the next day with festering skin and exploding organs. If there was a dragon or a dragon god, it was an evil god, the kind of entity that would drive you insane just by looking at it. So, the identity of the elder god Ophelia's family worshipped remained a mystery, one likely not to be revealed until much later in the game. But if he could just get a hint of which god she was kin to, he might be able to figure out the source of her powers and what she was really up to. The gods. Ophelia repeated the word, her voice a low murmur. She seemed to be lost in thought, her eyes flickering. The gods? Huh, the gods. How laughable that anyone would believe in that kind of god. Leo watched her quietly. Suddenly, Ophelia's expression turned to ice. She glared at him, a cold smile on her lips. Are you testing me? Leo's eyes widened in genuine surprise. The timer on persuasion/pacify isn't up yet. Did the skill just fail? Ophelia corruption level plus 20. Her corruption level shot up. She stood slowly, her eyes now gleaming with murderous intent. Do not ask what you are not meant to know. This is your final warning. In that moment, Leo could have sworn he heard that strange, squirming sound again, echoing from the depths of the estate. Ophelia squeezed her eyes shut, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. Leo watched her intently. After what felt like an eternity, her tremors subsided, and the squirming sound from within the estate finally ceased. She opened her eyes again, her gaze cool and detached. What did you hear? Leo just looked at her, saying nothing. He'd expected that with her corruption spiking and him discovering one of her secrets, she would take some drastic action. But instead, she gave him one last, deep look, then turned and strode quickly out of the hall, her figure vanishing into the encroaching night. As she left, Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Only then did the thoughts he'd been suppressing come rushing back. Persuasion/pacify failed? No, that's impossible. It's a game mechanic, and the game's mechanics are absolute. It didn't fail. It never activated in the first place. Once he straightened out that line of thought, Leo immediately seized on something else, something unusual. A wave of manic joy washed over him. He thought he finally understood. If his guess was correct, this was his one and only hope of escaping this godforsaken estate. But first, he needed to run one more small test. After Ophelia left, the vast hall felt empty and silent, with only Leo remaining. He pulled out his pocket watch. 7:00 p.m. Night had officially fallen. He glanced around. Maybe it was because of what happened last time, but the quiet old mansion seemed to take on a sinister atmosphere as darkness settled. Leo slipped back to his bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and rang the small silver bell. There wasn't even the sound of footsteps in the hall. A moment later, a sharp knock came at the door. "Mr. Sterling, what do you require?" Leo opened the door and let the maid in, his eyes immediately fixing on her face. He remembered her. They'd exchanged a few words during the day. But now, at night, she was like a different person. Her face was as blank as Carolyn's had been, her eyes stiff and unblinking, locked onto him. "Mr. Sterling, what do you require?" she repeated. "I'm hungry. Give me something to eat," Leo said flatly. "Very well." The maid nodded and turned to leave. The instant her back was to him, Leo shot off the bed like a coiled spring. A crimson shadow blurred across the room as he locked his arm around the maid's throat from behind. "Mr. Sterling." The maid's voice was a low, raspy whisper. "Tell me, what is this estate?" Leo hissed in her ear, his voice dripping with menace. In his other hand, the crimson edge materialized, its sharp point glinting. "What the hell are you people up to?" But the maid, even with his arm crushing her windpipe, showed no fear, no panic. Her voice just grew hoarser. "Mr. Sterling, you must not pry into the secrets of the estate. These are the princess's orders. Talk, or I'll kill you." Leo tightened his grip. Still, there was no reaction. Her voice grew fainter, like a normal person on the verge of suffocation. "Must not pry into the secrets. These are the princess's orders." She was a broken record. With a grunt of frustration, Leo released her. The maid turned, her face a perfect mask. "Will you be requiring something to eat, sir? Take me for a walk outside. I want to see what's out there." At this request, the maid shook her head stiffly. "Mr. Sterling, the princess has ordered that you are not to leave." That same line again. Leo's patience snapped. He shoved her aside and made a show of storming toward the door. "Fine, if you won't take me, I'm going home myself." Those words finally triggered a dramatic change. The maid moved with impossible speed, a blur of motion that kept pace with Leo's own 50-point agility. If she'd had that kind of speed when he'd ambushed her, he never would have gotten close. "Mr. Sterling." Leo felt a rush of air behind him and spun, slashing backward with his blade. The maid's head toppled from her shoulders with a soft thud. But she wasn't dead. The mouth on the severed head continued to open and close, repeating the same phrase over and over. "The princess has ordered that you are not to leave. The princess has ordered that you are not to leave." Leo quickly glanced down the hall. Seeing no other maids, he grabbed the head by its hair and picked it up. Then he dragged the headless corpse back into his room. He shut the door and stared at the head and body laid out side by side on the floorboards, a morbid curiosity taking hold of him. What the hell is this thing? He couldn't wait to find out. Using the razor-sharp crimson edge, he began to methodically dissect the headless corpse, cutting it into pieces large and small. Covered in filth and blood, Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, patiently examining the cross-sections under the light of his gas lamp, then sifting through the internal organs. Lungs, heart, gallbladder, liver, connective tissue, muscle. He went through everything, inside and out. It was all identical to a normal human's anatomy. No incredible healing factor, no magical aura, nothing to suggest a bizarre species. Wiping his bloody hands on a handkerchief, Leo stared quizzically at the maid's head, which was still acting as a repeater. "The princess has ordered that you are not to leave." It can survive even this, and it's still loyally carrying out its duties? Where do you even hire maids like this? "I'll take a dozen." He knew his behavior was more than a little deranged, but at this point, Leo wasn't far from being a complete psychopath himself. He stared at the horrific, dismembered remains scattered across the floor, lost in deep thought. This world didn't have ghosts, so this shouldn't be happening. It made no sense. His ability, persuasion/pacify, a higher-tier power tied to the game's core mechanics, hadn't worked. That also made no sense. But with each impossibility, the faint suspicion in his mind grew clearer, stronger, just as the answer was about to surface. "Mr. Sterling, what are you doing?" The head maid, Carolyn, appeared before him as if she'd been spawned out of thin air. Her face was blank. She didn't even glance at the gruesome state of her subordinate. Her eyes were fixed solely on Leo. "Running an experiment," Leo said, looking up at her. "Want to know the results?" It was like they were on two different wavelengths. "Violating the rules will result in punishment," she stated flatly. A pair of metal shackles appeared in her hands. She lunged at him with blinding speed. Leo sneered, his body launching backward. His boosted agility, combined with his vampiric abilities, worked in perfect sync. A crimson shadow flickered and vanished, leaving Carolyn to tackle empty air. "Do I look like a normal person to you?" Leo taunted. As he dodged, blood-red energy swirled around him, and the tip of the crimson edge elongated dramatically. That was the beauty of blood magic. It could be long, it could be short. It was a supernatural power perfect for both close and long-range combat. With a wide, horizontal sweep of the massive blade, Leo cleanly severed both of Carolyn's arms, sending them flying. The heavy shackles clattered to the floor. Blood gushed from Carolyn's stumps, but even with such a grievous injury, she expressed no pain. Without a moment's hesitation, she charged, trying to ram him with her body. The sound of the wooden bed frame splintering echoed through the room. The maid's slender frame contained the strength of an ox. If Leo hadn't dodged in time, his ribs would have been caved in. The two of them engaged in a chaotic chase around the spacious bedroom, a symphony of crashing furniture and splintering wood. Deep gouges appeared on the walls, and cracks spiderwebbed across the sturdy floor. Leo glanced back at Carolyn, his annoyance growing. The woman was a major pain in the ass, single-mindedly trying to pin him down, with no regard for her own safety. But he had more important things to do than waste time wrestling with her. The standoff lasted only a moment. After dodging another one of her desperate charges, Leo came to a sudden halt. The blood core in his chest pulsed, and he unleashed his blood magic to its fullest extent. A thick, cloying aura of death filled the bedroom. If any other living creature had been in the room with Carolyn, its life force would have been instantly drained, leaving it weak and helpless. It didn't matter. For Leo's current purpose, it was more than enough. The crimson mist began to coalesce, forming dozens upon dozens of razor-sharp arrowheads that shot forward, riddling Carolyn's charging body and pinning her in place. As she froze, Leo followed up with the crimson edge. A sickening sound of tearing flesh filled the air as the smell of fresh blood grew overwhelming. Carolyn, now missing all 4 limbs, collapsed to the floor, no longer a threat. Leo gave her a passing glance and moved on. The thing was impossible to kill anyway. As long as it wasn't in his way, he didn't care. He walked over to the wreckage of the bed and picked up his pillow. He ripped it open, sending a cloud of stuffing into the air, and retrieved the revolver he'd hidden inside. On instinct, he also patted the inner pocket of his coat. The cravat was still there, wrapped around the Eye of Insight brooch. Both items were crucial, and he'd been careful to keep them hidden since arriving at the estate. Just as he finished, the cloying, bloody air in the bedroom was filled with a strange, wet squirming sound, seemingly right next to him. Then, as if they were NPCs respawning, several more maids, all holding shackles, appeared in the room. Leo watched them with cold eyes, the muzzle of his revolver already pressed against his temple. From a moment his skill had failed to activate, he'd suspected one possibility. This world might not be real. The unkillable maids, their stiff, NPC-like behavior, their bizarre respawning appearances, it all pointed toward his theory. And yet, he had been forced to reload last time because his sanity had hit 0. That meant that, on some level, the estate was real. Otherwise, how could he have gone insane? So, building on his fake world theory, he developed another hypothesis. To prove it, he had to try dying. The instant the maids charged, Leo pulled the trigger. After the gunshot, the world fell silent. The next second, Leo jolted awake on the sofa. His vision was blurry, but he forced his heavy eyelids open and sat up, looking around. Ophelia and Carolyn turned to look at him, their expressions a mixture of confusion and surprise. They had been whispering to each other, but his sudden movement had interrupted them. Leo's head was spinning, a profound sense of disorientation washing over him. It felt like being violently woken by an alarm clock when his body was still desperate for sleep. He was drowsy, exhausted, his limbs heavy and weak. Forcing himself to focus, he checked his system interface. Save point. Ophelia's estate reloads remaining. For fifths, he had still only reloaded once. He hadn't died. This wasn't a reload. Vague, hazy memories surfaced in his mind, and he suddenly remembered what was happening. He'd been practicing horsemanship all day, finishing in the early evening. Exhausted, he had collapsed on the sofa, nearly falling asleep, but had been fighting to stay awake to confront Ophelia. He never would have guessed he'd actually dozed off. Your Highness, he's awake. Carolyn stammered, looking from Leo to Ophelia. Ophelia frowned, studying Leo for a moment before turning a cold glare on Carolyn. How did this happen? Carolyn immediately bowed her head in terror. I don't know. This shouldn't be possible. How could Mr. Sterling have woken up so suddenly? Hypnosis. Was it hypnosis? Leo's drowsiness vanished in an instant. He sat up straight. Several maids immediately appeared, moving to restrain him on the sofa. But with a burst of blood magic, Leo shoved them aside. That's it. That's what it was. The truth finally dawning on him, Leo stared with manic glee into Ophelia's cold, pale eyes. It's a dream. It's all a dream. The bizarre estate at night is a dream. No wonder dying didn't trigger a reload, but seeing the estate's true, fleshy form drove him insane and forced one. The two weren't contradictory. In a dream, he couldn't physically die, but he could still be terrified. He could be driven mad by an unspeakable horror, and it explained why his persuasion/pacify skill didn't work. How could he influence the emotions of someone who wasn't even real? Seeing Leo's ecstatic state, a flicker of something passed through Ophelia's eyes, but she quickly composed herself. She watched the agitated young man with a detached calm. I'm surprised you figured it out so quickly, she said, a faint smile touching her lips. How should I put this? I suppose I should commend you. You truly are the man I chose. Leo, holding the crimson edge, slowly advanced on her. Your Highness, be careful, Carolyn cried, positioning herself protectively in front of Ophelia. Get out of my way, Leo snapped, swinging the crimson edge in a wide arc. Carolyn drew a short sword to block, and the other maids all produced weapons, surrounding Leo in a tight circle. There's no need to be so tense, Ophelia said, her expression unchanged. She waved a dismissive hand. Let me hear what else he has to say. Leo ignored the hostile glares of the maids, his eyes locked on Ophelia's. He had one more crucial thing to confirm. Persuasion/pacify. Master activated. Ophelia, what is the point of all this? Leo sneered. To share a dream with me? To live out some beautiful fantasy where we're together forever. Of course, Ophelia's smile was a razor's edge. Not. She seemed completely unfazed by his blood magic, even taking a step closer to him. The maids tensed, watching his every move. Though, I have considered the idea of being together forever. She smiled like a poisonous rose. But that's hardly a challenge for me. You will be mine sooner or later. I'm in no rush. Her confident expression reminded Leo of something she had said before. I'm going to remake you, from the outside in. A complete and total transformation. A chill crept down his spine. He was beginning to understand what she was trying to do. The effects of persuasion/pacify were still active. Leo lowered his gaze, his mind racing. Suddenly, he looked up, his eyes boring into hers once more. He spoke a single word, one that seemed to have no connection to the current situation. Nodens. For a split second, Leo saw a flicker of genuine shock in Ophelia's eyes. She masked it almost instantly, her expression returning to one of cool indifference. But it was too late. Leo had the answer he needed. Heh, hiv. So that's it. The Lord of the Great Abyss, Master of the Dreamlands, the Elder God Nodens. So he is the god you worship. Leo's gaze remained fixed on Ophelia. He had pored over countless old texts, and in those dusty tomes, he'd found scattered legends of this particular elder god. The so-called Dreamlands were a mysterious dimension constructed from something akin to the subconscious or the fabric of dreams. Its physical laws were vastly different from reality, and it was home to numerous malevolent species and even other gods. A few lucky humans have been known to stumble into it. It was, in short, a bizarre, phantasmagoric world, and the elder god, known as Nodens, was its master. He'd never imagined that Ophelia could wield a similar power, constructing a false world that, while small, was perfectly detailed. Was it a testament to her natural talent as an elder god's kin, or had she actually communicated with that great and terrible entity? That wasn't his concern right now. Now that he knew her methods, he had a way to break them. He unleashed his blood magic again, and a thick, crimson mist began to spread through the hall. Leo's figure dissolved into the fog, quickly disappearing from sight. Seeing this, Ophelia narrowed her eyes. The maids immediately formed a protective circle around her. I didn't expect this, she murmured to herself, a hint of surprise in her voice. 4 years, and you've learned to use the powers of the bloodkin. She fell into thought. Could it be related to that vampire woman in his mansion? She had always been aware of Leo's strange abilities and knew some of the secrets of that old house. It was why she hadn't gone there immediately upon her return. She was wary of his power to control others. But she wasn't afraid anymore. To make Leo hers, she first had to strip him of that ability. And now, she was closer than ever to succeeding. The blood mist began to drift toward the main entrance. A faint smile touched Ophelia's lips. Trying to escape, she clapped her hands softly. In an instant, 5 or 6 shadowy figures materialized in the hall. No one saw how they appeared. They were simply there like ghosts. Your Highness, my apologies for the delay, the lead shadow guard said, bowing respectfully. It doesn't matter, Ophelia said with a slight nod. Recall your men. This is what's most important right now. The shadow guard nodded curtly. Then, Ophelia turned her gaze toward the roiling blood mist. At her command, the shadow guards plunged into the fog. They seemed to see right through Leo's gambit, their movements locking onto the source of the power. The fight was over in a heartbeat. For the first time, Leo experienced the terrifying power of humanity's apex supernatural agents. He didn't even have time to react before his limbs were seized, his power nullified. The shadow guards held him fast while the maids swarmed in, pinning him to the floor. Leo struggled to lift his head. Ophelia walked over slowly and crouched down, looking down at him with a triumphant smile. You lose. Heh, I haven't lost a thing, Leo sneered back at her. She didn't know about his reloads. So what if he lost a fight? He could just start over. But Ophelia was still smiling, a knowing, meaningful look in her eyes. No, you've lost. Leo narrowed his eyes, wondering where her confidence was coming from. Your Highness. Carolyn approached, and Leo noticed she was holding something. Ophelia nodded slightly. When she looked back at Leo, the smile on her face deepened. At her signal, Carolyn knelt and dangled a pocket watch, emanating a faint energy in front of Leo's eyes. The watch swayed back and forth, its rhythm steady and hypnotic. Leo instinctively squeezed his eyes shut, but the maids forced them open, holding his eyelids so he couldn't look away. You're so tired, so sleepy, aren't you? Carolyn's voice was as soft as a cloud. Just watch me. Quietly. Rest for a while. Just sleep. Just for a little while. With every beat of his heart, the swaying of the watch seemed to slow, its presence growing fainter. A long while later, gazing at the now deeply slumbering Leo, Carolyn finally let out a sigh of relief. Your Highness, Mr. Sterling is asleep. I know, Ophelia murmured, a frown on her face as she seemed to be considering something. The longer this drags on, the more risk there is. I can't afford to be soft any longer. She stroked Leo's cheek, her words spoken to herself. Then, she began to check his pockets, pulling out a folded plaid cravat from an inner lining. She saw the mysterious brooch wrapped within. Ophelia's expression grew cold and distant. She looked at Carolyn. We're accelerating the plan. I want this finished within a few days. Carolyn's face filled with concern. But Your Highness, your body. Do not worry about me, Ophelia said, waving a dismissive hand. Seeing her resolve, the headmaid could only bow her head. Time flowed. It was a morning where 100 flowers were in bloom. A gentle breeze whispered across fields of wheat. The old, elegant estate stood silently, as picturesque as an oil painting. A white-haired girl in a simple white dress and a sun hat walked slowly through the garden. A faint smile played on her lips as she looked toward a boy sitting quietly on a bench. The boy was watching the tulips sway in the breeze, his back to her, a lonely figure. He seemed to be waiting for something. The white-haired girl crept up behind him with a playful smile and covered his eyes with her hands. Guess who? The handsome boy gave a helpless laugh. Ophelia, stop playing around. The girl removed her hands, and the boy turned. They looked at each other and smiled, a gentle warmth filling the air between them. Contemplating the meaning of life again? Aren't you hungry? Ophelia sat down next to Leo, resting her head on his shoulder as they looked out at the sea of pale yellow flowers. Leo shook his head softly. I don't know. I've been like this lately. He would just sit on the bench, staring at the flower beds for hours on end. Is something on your mind? Ophelia tilted her head. Leo fell silent. Watching his expression, Ophelia offered a tender smile. You can tell me, you know. Maybe I can help. Maybe, Leo said, looking thoughtfully into her pale eyes. Maybe I'm homesick, but this is your home, Ophelia said, her expression turning to one of confusion. Where else would you go? I don't know. Leo looked down. I don't know. He pressed his hands to his temples, his face a mask of confusion and pain. Why? He thought, isn't this my home? Everything he'd known since childhood was here. The wheat fields, the creek, the smooth stones, the insects humming in the hills, and the girl who had grown up with him, his closest friend. Leo silently looked up at the gentle smile, so close to his own. Ophelia was an outcast member of the royal family, and he was the scion of a fallen noble house. When they first met, he was still young enough to be stealing pears from the farmers' orchards, just a little brat. In this quiet countryside, far from the bustle of the city, life felt dull and predictable. So when the beautiful, pale girl first appeared before him, Leo's heart had skipped a beat. Perhaps it was loneliness, perhaps it was something else, but the two kindred spirits, the quiet girl and the withdrawn boy, felt as if they had known each other for an eternity, even at their first meeting. They quickly became inseparable, playing together, teasing each other, lying in the grass, staring up at the starry sky, talking about everything and nothing. Gradually, it felt as though they had become a part of each other, something that could never be torn apart. You're probably just not sleeping well, Ophelia said softly. Leo sighed in frustration. Seeing this, Ophelia gently patted her lap. He rested his head there, and the white-haired girl gazed down at him. If you can't figure out, don't think about it. Just rest. Looking up at the pale eyes watching him so tenderly, Leo slowly closed his own. The girl's lap was always so soft, so comforting. At times like this, he could find a long-lost sense of peace. Maybe he could push those strange thoughts away. But this time it was different. As soon as he closed his eyes, his thoughts grew even more chaotic. An old, unfamiliar mansion kept appearing in his mind's eye. It was as if it was calling to him, like a long-forgotten dream or a memory from a past life. He felt that in that old house, there was sadness and joy and many magical things. He felt that if he could just go there, he would truly be home. That place is home. Leo's eyes snapped open. He didn't see the look of surprise on Ophelia's face as he clutched his head in pain. Why was he having these thoughts? Wasn't his home right here? How could that mansion he'd never even seen be his home? Here he had a quiet, peaceful life. His family had fallen, but their remaining fortune was more than enough for him to live comfortably. He had his childhood friend, so close they were like two halves of a whole. She was always smiling so gently, as if she could never be angry, could never hurt him. And she was beautiful, as lovely as a fairy from a dream. Wasn't that enough? Leo clenched his fists. He couldn't voice these thoughts. It would disappoint Ophelia. But lost in his internal struggle, Leo didn't notice. The girl who was always watching him. Her eyes now held a flicker of something dark and sinister. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. Let's go back and rest, Ophelia said, her voice full of concern as she touched his forehead. It's getting chilly out here. You might have caught a cold. Leo remained silent, but nodded. Carolyn has breakfast ready. Let's go. Ophelia took his hand, and together, they walked slowly back toward the estate. The breeze whispering through the wheat fields fell silent. The morning sun was warm and gentle. Back in the estate's dining room, an array of exquisite dishes was laid out on the table, a spread far too lavish for a simple breakfast. Leo looked at the food, but felt no appetite. He numbly picked up his fork, not even registering what he put in his mouth as he began to chew mechanically. His mind was still on what had happened in the garden. Ophelia watched his distracted state, her brow furrowing slightly. Leo, she said, pouting with a hint of displeasure. Carolyn and Susan were up all morning preparing this. If you don't like something, just say so. Leo forced a smile and shook his head. Not at all. I have the utmost respect for their cooking skills. Pushing the strange dream from his mind, he adopted a look of hearty enjoyment. Look at this steak, it's cooked perfectly. He took a bite and nodded sagely. It's cooked just like a steak. Seeing Leo revert to his usual goofy self, Ophelia giggled. What are you even talking about? A steak is a steak. Can it be cooked any other way? You'd be surprised. For some inexplicable reason, a memory of a charred, carbonized piece of dark matter steak flashed in his mind, and a genuine smile touched his lips. That particular disaster had been the work of someone who couldn't cook to save her life. Wait, the sudden memory fragment made him pause. The impression of that burnt steak was both familiar and strange, as if it had happened just recently. But Leo shot a quizzical glance at Ophelia. He hadn't left this estate in years. He'd been living here with her the whole time. So where did that memory come from? Besides the maids, who else would have cooked for him? Leo was lost in thought again. He felt like it was a memory he shouldn't have forgotten. One of many buried deep. Leo. Ophelia's voice cut through his thoughts as she leaned in close. What has gotten into you these past few days? Her pale eyes studied him with suspicion. You're so distracted. Her tone became teasing. Are you missing some pretty girl? Leo looked up. I am. The color drained from Ophelia's face. Her expression became a blank mask, and her pale eyes turned cold as ice. It was a look he had never seen on her before. An involuntary shiver went through him. The gentle, kind girl he knew suddenly felt miles away. Leo was alarmed, but he kept his expression neutral. He smiled and said, I'm missing Carolyn's bedtime massages, Miss Susan's pies, and the incredibly talented Bella. The new clothes she tailors for me always fit perfectly. Hearing this, Ophelia visibly relaxed. You smooth talker. For a moment there, I thought you were missing some girl from the village or one of the ladies from the city. Her expression softened considerably. It's just the maids here. Oh, so you don't mind if it's just the maids? Leo glanced at the several maids standing nearby. They're all quite pretty, with good figures, and they're about my age. He gave Ophelia a playful look. Aren't you afraid? They wouldn't dare. Ophelia's head snapped toward the maids, her eyes blazing with murderous intent. The maids, caught at her glare for no reason, all bowed their heads in terror. A chilling silence fell over the dining room. Ophelia, Leo stared at her, astonished. He had never seen her lose her composure like this, yet it had happened multiple times today. It was as if he was meeting her for the first time. I'm sorry. Ophelia quickly reined in her emotions and stood up abruptly. I suppose I haven't been sleeping well either. I'm a bit on edge. She forced a smile, kissed his cheek, and then quickly vanished from the vast dining room. Leo watched her retreating back, a thoughtful expression on his face. That evening, after his bedtime massage from the head maid, Carolyn, Leo returned to his bedroom and gave a weary yawn. He lay down on the bed and quickly drifted off. Leo rarely dreamed, but this time he found himself in a strange and unfamiliar place. Slow-moving airships drifted across the sky, and the din of a bustling street market filled his ears. He looked at the towering buildings that stretched as far as the eye could see and realized he was in the middle of a sprawling city. As he wandered the unfamiliar streets, someone bumped into his shoulder hard. The person was furtive and didn't even apologize, instead darting quickly back into the crowd. "Leo, what are you waiting for?" "After him. The killer's getting away." A face with a thick stubble and a captain's insignia appeared before him. "You're—" Leo frowned. Though he'd never seen this police captain before, he felt an odd sense of familiarity, as if they were old friends. The captain gave him a quick glance, then plunged into the crowd without another word. The sound of gunshots echoed through the streets. How strange, Leo thought. Why drag me along on a manhunt? I'm not his partner. He continued walking, and the scene began to shift and warp. He saw an academy, with students riding commuter buses to class. This place was also deeply familiar, especially when he read the words inscribed above the gate. Blackwood Royal Academy of Magitech and Science. Weird. Why is this so familiar? I've never been here, have I? I don't think I even went to the school in town. Ophelia always hired private tutors for me. He kept walking aimlessly, watching the familiar yet strange scenes unfold. He felt like he was starting to remember something. This was New Haven, the imperial capital. Finally, after another jarring shift, Leo found himself in downtown New Haven. It was filthy, chaotic, and filled with a foul stench. He didn't know why he was here, but on some strange impulse, he stopped in front of a narrow, pitch-black alleyway. A thin sliver of sunlight struggled to pierce the narrow alley, creating a faint line on the ground. Crows and stray dogs prowled nearby. The air was thick with a lingering, cloying smell of blood. Following the scent with his eyes, Leo saw a pair of brilliant blue eyes staring back at him warily. She looked like a cornered animal caught in a trap, tense and ready to snarl, but too weak to flee. Leo stopped in his tracks. It was a little girl. She was slumped against the wall, covered in blood. The sliver of light fell on her arm, which was shockingly thin and pale. But Leo wasn't surprised by her condition. He was surprised because he felt like he knew her. Her name was right on the tip of his tongue, a word he felt he could shout out at any moment. But when he opened his mouth, nothing came out. He pressed a hand to his forehead. Every time he tried to remember, a splitting headache tore through his skull. Her name was— What was it? The girl's wary expression shifted to one of confusion. Finally, Leo gave up trying to recall the name. It felt like a wall was blocking his thoughts. He simply started walking, heading into the darkness of the alley. He would just ask her directly. But the moment that thought formed in his mind, the entire world twisted and collapsed. The alley, the buildings, the entire city dissolved in an instant. Leo's eyes flew open. His vision was blurry for a second, but it quickly cleared to reveal Carolyn's face hovering over him. When she saw he was awake, a flash of shock crossed her features before she smoothed it over. Leo couldn't shake the feeling that she was up to something. "You were having a nightmare," she said. "Her Highness and I were worried, so we came to check on you." Leo glanced to the side. Ophelia was there, her pale eyes filled with concern. Her complexion was poor, almost ashen. Seeing him awake, she came over and placed a soft hand on his forehead. "Insomnia again, and now nightmares. Why is your sleep quality getting so poor? Are Carolyn's massages not working anymore?" She immediately looked at Carolyn and ordered, "Go get some incense and the other sleep aids. Bring them all here." Leo sat up abruptly, holding up a hand. "No, not this time. I can fall asleep on my own." He'd always had trouble sleeping, for reasons he couldn't remember, so Ophelia always had Carolyn help him. Carolyn possessed some strange, mysterious abilities. She called it helping him sleep, but it was basically hypnosis. He'd always trusted her, figuring it was for his own good. But today, something felt wrong. He felt a deep-seated resistance to Carolyn's hypnosis. Once a seed of doubt is planted, it spreads like a plague, and now he found he couldn't trust her anymore. He couldn't even trust. His gaze slowly shifted to the beautiful face beside him. Ophelia. Leo never thought the word doubt could be directed at Ophelia, the girl he'd grown up with. He felt guilty for even thinking it. She had always taken care of him, meticulously, tenderly, and with her noble status, she had no reason to be stuck in this backwater town with him. She was too good to be true, so perfect that it sometimes felt like a dream, an illusion. So when that doubt attached itself to Ophelia, it created a deeply conflicted, chaotic feeling within him. Seeing the firm resolve in Leo's expression, Ophelia sighed. Fine. If you don't want to, we'll skip it for tonight. She stood up and left with Carolyn. Good night. Sweet dreams. Good night, Leo replied. The door closed softly, and the room was once again plunged into silence. After leaving Leo's room, Ophelia's pace quickened. She and Carolyn went to her office, where Ophelia sank into a chair, rubbing her temples weakly. Your Highness, are you all right? Carolyn asked with immediate concern. Ophelia didn't answer, instead murmuring to herself, this shouldn't be happening. Why couldn't I control my emotions today? Leo had been at her estate for over a week, and her plan had succeeded on the very first night. She had trapped him with her power. For the past few days, Leo's nights had belonged to her. But he was sharp, and he had quickly sensed that something was amiss. That was why she had been forced to accelerate her plan, using the time he was asleep to run her mini dreamlands at an accelerated rate. So, while only a week had passed in reality, in the dream, it felt as though they had spent a long decade together. It wasn't a true decade, of course. The human mind processes thought incredibly quickly. Ophelia only needed to make adjustments at key junctures, and Leo's memories would develop according to her design. She was so close to success. After the plan began, on the first day, in reality, he forgot about the recent airship bombing. On the second, he forgot he was a student at Blackwood Academy. On the third, he forgot about his vampire professor. On the fourth, his memories of Helena were wiped completely clean. The fifth day, the sixth, the seventh. He even forgot where he came from, forgot his powers, the authority of that old mansion. He had, for all intents and purposes, become a normal person. Ophelia no longer had to worry about the threat of the other women in Leo's life, because he didn't remember them at all. She no longer had to worry about him using the mansion's power to control her. In a way, Leo would finally truly belong to her, and only to her. At that thought, despite her physical exhaustion, a strange, joyful smile spread across Ophelia's face. Such a perfect beginning. There had been a few bumps, but the subsequent progress had been astonishingly smooth. The sweet fruit of her labor was nearly within her grasp. This was her plan, her perfect plan. Thinking of this, Ophelia looked at Carolyn with a sense of urgency. He's already developing a resistance to the hypnosis. Tomorrow night, we use drugs. Yes, Your Highness. Carolyn looked at Ophelia, who was noticeably weaker, her cheeks thinner, and her expression filled with worry. Your emotional outburst today was likely due to overexerting your power, making it difficult to concentrate. She hesitated. Perhaps we should pause for a day or two. If you continue to use your power at this intensity every day, I'm afraid you. No, Ophelia refused without a second thought. That tentacle monster and the vampire are still looking for him, and the New Haven PD has been causing me trouble. I can't stop. Carolyn wanted to argue, but Ophelia's expression was unyielding. If there is nothing else, you are dismissed. I will need you tomorrow. The head maid could only bow her head. Yes, Your Highness. She exited the room, closing the door softly behind her. The office returned to its initial silence. Ophelia leaned back in her chair, exhausted, and let out a long sigh. Another morning dawned. Leo sat alone on the garden bench, quietly watching the sea of flowers. His mind, however, was a whirlwind of activity. He was trying to sort through the fragmented memories from his dreams, attempting to piece them together. He'd been dreaming for several days straight, more dreams than he'd had in his entire life. More importantly, the seemingly bizarre dreams felt intensely real. The city, the academy, the case, the police captain, and the little girl with blue eyes. It was as if he had personally experienced it all. In stark contrast to the quiet life of Leo in the countryside, the life of the other Leo was thrilling and dangerous. But strangely, none of it felt out of place. It felt natural, like it was supposed to be that way. Leo felt like he was trapped inside a cocoon. This repetitive, peaceful daily life wasn't what he wanted. Perhaps it was an innate desire for knowledge and exploration, but he desperately wanted the other Leo to be the real him. As he was thinking, just like every other morning, the white-haired girl in the sundress found him. Ophelia sat down beside him. Didn't you sleep well? This time, it was Leo who looked at her with curiosity. Ophelia's cheeks were a little hollow, and her normally bright eyes were shadowed with fatigue. It's your fault. She pouted. Mine. Leo blinked innocently. You toss and turn all night. It's keeping me from sleeping well, too, she said, crossing her arms. Can sleep disorders be contagious? Leo asked with a helpless look. Maybe you should have Carolyn give you a massage. Hmm, that's not a bad idea, she mumbled, looking down. She quickly changed the subject. In a few days, we should start planning our wedding. My dear gentleman, how are your lessons in aristocratic etiquette progressing? She looked at him with eager anticipation, her pale eyes shining. Don't even ask, Leo groaned. Horsemanship, dress, deportment, dining etiquette, ballroom dancing. The nobles had far too many damn rules. He spent nearly every day under Carolyn's instruction, so exhausted he had no time to think about anything else. His morning ritual of sitting here and watching the flowers had become his only respite, his only chance to clear his head. But one question had always lingered in the back of his mind, brought to the forefront by the events of the past few days. He was supposedly a fallen noble himself. Shouldn't he have learned all this as a child? Why couldn't he remember any of it? Why did Carolyn have to teach him everything from scratch? Ophelia seemed to have already lost herself in daydreams of the future. You must be tired of this place, aren't you? Once we get past my father, we'll travel the world. We'll visit every city. We'll eat every kind of food in the world. Just thinking about it filled Ophelia with a sense of bliss. She looked at Leo with a beaming smile. But Leo's expression was distant, his eyes unfocused. Why? Does that sound so familiar? Had someone said that to him before? Vaguely, from the depths of his mind, a girl's voice emerged. We could go to the gardens at our Den Castle. I hear they're beautiful, with fields of tulips that stretch on forever. We could go to the port of Brugge, the most famous merchant port in the empire. They have food from all over the world. We could go shopping every day, eat delicious things, and never have the same meal twice for a year. Leo clutched his head as a sharp pain shot through it. It was always like this when he tried to remember. It was as if some unseen will was stopping him, trying to keep him sealed in layers of cocoon. Every time he tried to break free, the pain was unbearable. Leo, seeing his pained expression, Ophelia's reaction this time was not one of concern. She stared at him with a complex look in her eyes and asked cautiously, "Did you remember something?" Leo nearly blurted out all his frustrating thoughts. But he caught a glimpse of her face and forced himself to say no. It's just the lack of sleep again. Is that so? Ophelia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Leo, tell me the truth. What truth? Ophelia stared at him intently. Are you thinking about another woman? No, Leo asked, feigning confusion. Why would you say that? Ophelia let out a cold laugh. Last night, in your sleep, you kept calling out a woman's name. A woman's name? Leo's heart skipped a beat. Who? He desperately wanted to know. The name was so important to him. But Ophelia saw right through him. She said slyly, "You're that eager to know who she is? Do you like her?" Seeing her uncharacteristically sharp expression, Leo suddenly laughed. He quickly came up with an excuse. Of course I do. She was chasing me in my dream, trying to kill me. Can't I at least ask for my nemesis's name? Her expression didn't soften. Leo continued to placate her. What if she's a real person? I'm just being cautious, that's all. Is that so? Ophelia said, still glaring at him. Of course. It was just a person in a dream. Don't be so jealous. Leo grinned and opened his arms, pulling her into a tight hug despite her resistance. Held in his embrace, Ophelia finally quieted down a bit, though her resentment clearly hadn't faded. Tonight, I don't want to hear that name. Her pale eyes were still filled with displeasure. All right, Leo quickly agreed. Inwardly, he thought, how am I supposed to control what I dream about? Ophelia continued, your sleep is getting worse. Tonight, you're using the medication. Leo paused for a beat. What? Her expression was a mixture of a smile and a sneer. You're not willing? Leo's mind raced. He then nodded decisively. I'm willing. So quick to agree? Ophelia sat up, her eyes even more suspicious. You get mad if I agree, and you get even madder if I don't, Leo said with a look of utter helplessness. You're really hard to please. I'm doing this for your own good. Her voice suddenly rose, becoming sharp, almost hysterical. Leo stared at her, stunned. He could see a manic, obsessive glint in her pale eyes. Through those eyes, he didn't see concern or anger. He saw a kind of hidden terror. She was afraid of something. He was right. Leo was now certain. Ophelia wasn't doing this for his sake. She had another motive. But he still agreed, because he wanted to fall asleep. He needed to continue that dream. He had to know what that girl's name was. And he had to know who he really was. Unbeknownst to her, Leo was beginning to doubt everything around him. Night fell. After Carolyn's routine bedtime massage, Leo swallowed a few white pills. He quickly grew drowsy and fell asleep on the sofa. But the maids didn't carry him back to his room as they usually did. After Leo was unconscious, Ophelia strode over, her expression serious as she looked at Carolyn. Carolyn reported immediately. "Your Highness, Mr. Sterling is asleep." Ophelia nodded, satisfied. Carolyn then asked, "I didn't expect Mr. Sterling to take the medication so willingly this time. Did you persuade him?" "I didn't have to." Ophelia herself was puzzled. "I don't know why he suddenly agreed. We've always had to be so subtle with the hypnosis, I never thought." Carolyn's expression was also one of suspicion. Then Ophelia suddenly smiled. "It doesn't matter what he's thinking. It's too late now." She smiled with absolute confidence. "Tonight, I will end this." Leo's cooperation played right into her hands. Tonight, she would completely erase all of his old memories. She was already lost in reverie, imagining how they would spend their long days and long nights together. The thought made her tremble with excitement, her breathing growing ragged. The head maid, Carolyn, watched her master with a sense of trepidation. The princess, who was always so calm and detached, as if nothing in the world could interest her, became a completely different person when it came to Mr. Sterling, a person she no longer recognized. Or perhaps this was the real her? Ophelia's pale eyes glanced her way, and Carolyn quickly lowered her head. "Tomorrow, lift the restrictions on the estate. Guests will be permitted entry from now on." "Yes, Your Highness." Carolyn nodded immediately. In the dead of night, the entire estate was silent. But in Leo's world, it was still daytime. He was back in downtown New Haven. Narrow, oppressive, dim. In the alley, a single patch of faint light fell on the girl. Her brilliant blue eyes were still staring at him nervously. So dreams can be serialized, Leo thought. Picking up right where it left off, he walked forward without hesitation, stepping into the darkness. The girl flinched slightly, but she seemed too weak to even sit up, simply leaning against the wall, watching him approach. In the dim light, Leo noticed several black tentacles. They seemed to be growing from the girl's body. 2 of them had been severed, and thick, dark blood dripped onto the ground. So that was the source of the smell. She was injured badly. Leo's curiosity was overwhelming. He asked, "Who are you? Have we met before?" The only response was a faint, hoarse whisper. "Hungry." Leo froze. Hungry? He looked at the girl again. She was collapsed here, not because of her injuries, but because she was starving. It made sense. Her arms were like sticks. Who knew how many days it had been since she'd eaten? "You're hungry, right? Wait here," Leo said. He hurried out of the alley, rounded a couple of blocks, and bought a loaf of bread from a downtown bakery. When he returned, he held out the still-warm bread to the girl. "Here, eat this. It's fresh from the oven." The girl's blue eyes flickered as she looked at the bread held out to her. She looked surprised and confused, as if she couldn't comprehend someone helping her. Leo wiggled the bread, like he was tempting a wary puppy. Finally, with a sudden burst of strength, the girl sat up and snatched the bread from his hand. She scurried to a corner and began devouring it, glancing back at him every few bites as if afraid he would take it away. Leo watched her, a sad smile on his face. He waited quietly. After she finished, the girl turned back and looked up at him. There were crumbs on her lips. Her blue eyes shone with a strange light. It was a very particular look, one filled with a cautious gratitude and awe, as if she was feeling warm for the first time in a long time. When that look registered in Leo's mind, it hit him like a bolt of lightning. He had been about to ask her name again, but now he just stood there, frozen, his eyes growing wider and wider. He had seen that look before. No, not like it. It was a look seared into his memory, something he would never forget. This scene, this moment, he had lived it. This was part of his real memory. Leo felt as if he had been jolted awake from a drunken stupor, a cold sweat breaking out all over his body. Without even trying, he could remember what happened next. He would take this little girl in, become her brother. They would live together in an old mansion, keeping each other company, going through countless adventures. And her name was Helena, Leo asked, his voice barely a whisper. The instant the name left his lips, the dark alley dissolved. Leo looked around in shock. He was in a very familiar building. "Brother." Helena clutched her stomach, tugging at his sleeve playfully. "Stop lazing around on the sofa, reading the paper. I'm hungry." Leo stared at the familiar furniture in the old mansion, then at Helena pouting up at him. His face was a mask of utter shock. "Helena!" He grabbed her hand, making her jump in surprise. "What's wrong, brother? If you really don't want to cook, you don't have to yell at me." "No, that's not it." Leo knew the Helena before him was just a figment of his dream, but he spoke to her with desperate earnestness. "Talk to me. Tell me about our past. Help me remember. Quickly." Though Leo was acting like a complete lunatic, even the dream version of Helena was just as obedient as the real one. She sat with him on the sofa and began to tell him their story. Well, a long time ago, Leo listened with grim focus, not daring to miss a single word. He heard about their first meeting in the alley, about him containing strange and unusual girls. And with each word, it was like waking up from a long slumber. He suddenly remembered his most important ability, the foundation of his existence, the one thing he could never, ever forget. I remember it all. I am Leo Sterling. I came from another world. I am the master of this mansion, the warden of the sanctuary. I am a secret investigator who walks in the night. I am the man who will save this world. I'm the protagonist of this world, not some useless, washed-up noble rotting away in the countryside, and certainly not some hollow shell, brainwashed by Ophelia, whose entire future is hers to command. Thinking of what Ophelia had done, Leo's face darkened. If he hadn't seen Helena today, he never would have guessed that the beautiful, peaceful life he'd been living, a life anyone would envy, was nothing more than a script she had crafted for him in the dreamlands. Leo shot to his feet, a wave of pure fury washing over him. But then, the dreamscape shifted once more. Everything in a dream is chaotic, bizarre, and without logic. To Leo's astonishment, the world around him began to crumble. The old mansion quickly vanished. He was back at Ophelia's estate, sitting on the same bench where he spent every morning. Helena was gone. In her place stood Ophelia, her eyes cold and hard as she stared at him. Quite the touching reunion for brother and sister, wasn't it? She twisted her lips into a humorless smile, an expression both sinister and terrifying. Time flows differently in a dream than in reality. Unfortunately for you, just putting you to sleep a little early was enough for you to figure out so much. You never fail to impress me, Leo. Leo's gaze was just as cold. Ophelia, your plan has failed. Oh, she raised an eyebrow. I admit I was a bit hasty, a bit careless, but my plan is still flawless. You don't actually believe. She stared at him, her smile dripping with scorn. You don't believe that just by remembering, you can escape, do you? You're the one who agreed to take the medicine from Carolyn, you know. She used a triple dose. No matter how you die in this dream, no matter how you try to wake up, how you struggle to break free, it's impossible. Her laughter grew more and more unhinged. This is the last time you will ever be able to speak their names, so cherish it. After tonight, you will forget everything. In your world, there will be only me. From now on, your eyes will only ever be on me. This is the transformation I wanted. Leo watched the trembling, manic, and utterly deranged Ophelia, and a bitter sigh escaped him. The beautiful, gentle girl from his memories was well and truly gone. In her place was the real her, cold, obsessive, manipulative, and willing to do anything to get what she wanted. This was the real Ophelia. Enough, he snapped, his sharp voice cutting through her crazed laughter. Stop this pathetic display. Ophelia fell silent. She looked at Leo, who was watching her with a calm, detached expression, and a flicker of unease appeared in her pale eyes. Something was wrong. Even in this situation, why was he so calm? Was it helplessness? Had he given up? Or did he still have some other ace up his sleeve? Ophelia immediately dismissed the thought. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. This is my dream. Everything here is under my control. The only thing you can do now is obey. Ophelia sneered. If you do, I can at least make this less painful for you. After all, even in a dream, pain is very real. Leo just shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. This is my dream. It was your dream in the beginning, Ophelia said, her smug smile returning. But now it's mine. With a casual wave of her hand, the environment warped again. Leo watched as the sky flickered from day to night, as buildings stretched infinitely upward, piercing the clouds. Ophelia was like a creator god, reshaping the world at will. She even pulled the sun and moon together, bathing the world in a bizarre, beautiful, and unsettling light. The display of power was spectacular, clearly meant to intimidate him. But Leo just smiled and shook his head again. Let's say it's our shared dream. But at the end of the day, I'm still dreaming, aren't I? Ophelia frowned. What are you trying to say? Leo looked her straight in the eye and said, with the gravity of a professor, it seems I have to educate the people of this world on modern psychology yet again. What? Ophelia stared at him, dumbfounded. Leo smiled. Dreams are a collection of the subconscious, a reflection of one's inner thoughts. If you can achieve a certain level of self-awareness within a dream, you can influence its outcome through psychological suggestion. It was a state known as a lucid dream. The dose of sleeping drugs in his system was massive. Normally, He couldn't wake up even if he transformed into a superhero and beat Ophelia to a pulp. But Leo had another way. He closed his eyes and focused, concentrating on the shape and feel of a small object. Soon, a brooch in the shape of a grotesque eyeball materialized in his palm. The moment he saw it, a chilling, visceral sense of dread washed over him, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of triumphant excitement. He had actually done it. It wasn't that he couldn't wake up. He had done it once before, though Ophelia didn't know it. All he had to do was look at that thing, that unspeakable entity. "What are you doing?" Ophelia cried out. She watched in shock as the object appeared in his hand. She didn't know what it was, but her instinct screamed that it was something terrible, something that would destroy her plan. She lunged, her hand shooting out to grab it. But it was too late. Leo had already pinned the brooch to his chest. The next second, his eyes went vacant. His entire body began to tremble. A scene of such indescribable horror unfolded before him that it defied language. The phantasmagoric dreamlands. Every element that constituted this world was made of mangled flesh and blood, pulsing, writhing. The buildings were piles of chopped meat and gore. Every maid in the estate was a twisted, filthy, bloody abomination. The streets were lined with massive tumors of fused organs and flesh, growing on trees. In alleyways, their veiny, root-like tendrils spreading deep underground. "Leo, wake up. You can't look at the truth of the dreamlands." Faintly, as if from a great distance, he heard Ophelia's voice, desperate and urgent. Leo smiled in what he thought was her direction. "Your plan failed. You didn't change me, but I'm going to change you. See you next time." Your sanity has been depleted, unable to continue. Forcing reload. When Leo opened his eyes, he was back at the gates of the estate. The same endless wheat field surrounded him, bathed in the warm, glorious gold of the setting sun. A gentle breeze rustled through his hair. He took a deep, shuddering breath of the suburban air. It wasn't as clean as he'd imagined. Probably too close to the city, it still carried a faint trace of smog. But it was infinitely better than the air in the dream. Fake was fake. Even if the dream world was a perfect paradise, it couldn't hold a candle to a single, flawed blade of grass in the real one. Save point. Ophelia's estate reloads remaining. 3/5 he was back. But this wasn't like the first two times, stumbling through the dark with caution and ignorance. This time, he had initiated the reload himself. And deep within him, a plan was beginning to take shape. A plan for Ophelia. "Mr. Sterling, please follow me." The man in black, a shadow guard, Leo supposed, gave him a polite nod before leading him into the estate's dining hall. Leo had been in this room countless times in the dream, to the point where he could map out the position of every piece of furniture with his eyes closed. But even more familiar was the face of the woman standing before him. Perhaps it was the third time looping back, or perhaps it was the newfound confidence to finally confront her, but this time Leo noticed details he'd missed before. Her hands were clasped tightly behind her back, a desperate attempt to hide the tremor of anxiety running through her. Her expression was the same mask of cool indifference she always wore. But for the briefest instant, when her eyes met his, a flicker of light betrayed her true emotions. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Leo's lips. It was his turn now. Leo. Ophelia had no idea what was running through his mind. She remained rooted to her spot, making no move to approach him. She offered a placid smile. "It's been 4 years. Did you, Em?" Her words were cut short as he closed the distance between them and pulled her into a crushing hug. A small gasp escaped her lips. Leo's embrace was too tight, too fierce, stealing the very breath from her lungs. The shadow guard and the maids beat a hasty retreat. "Leo." She squirmed in his arms, a hint of protest in her voice. "Did you miss me that much? This kind of passion. It's not like you at all." His only answer was to hold her tighter, pressing her against him as if he meant to fuse their bodies into one. Ophelia had never been held like this, with such commanding, searing intensity. Even his eyes, when she dared to look up, burned like nascent flames, threatening to melt her where she stood. She struggled for a moment, a token resistance, before her head drooped shyly. A blush crept up her cheeks, and her cherry-red lips parted as she panted for air. She didn't know what had gotten into Leo, but she liked this Leo. She liked this embrace. It felt as if no one had ever shown her such powerful emotion before. It wasn't just affection. It was something else, a kind of reverence, as if she were a priceless treasure, lost to dust for ages, finally discovered, finally and truly cherished by someone who understood her worth. They remained locked together for a long time before finally separating. Leo looked down into her pale eyes, now only inches from his. "Ophelia," he said with a soft smile, "it's been a while. I hope this is the last time I have to say that." After a quiet, candlelit dinner, Leo settled into life at the estate. The familiar conversations, the familiar scenes, it all replayed, just as before. Leo went along with it, placating Ophelia while agreeing to her every demand. Obey the estate's rules, never leave, never make her angry, and follow Carolyn's lessons in aristocratic etiquette. The following evening, after a full day of writing lessons, Leo collapsed onto a sofa, exhausted. He pretended to doze off, letting his eyes flutter closed. He knew exactly what was coming. Ophelia and Carolyn would take this opportunity to hypnotize him. This would be his first willing descent into the dreamlands she had constructed. He was counting on it. As Leo feigned sleep, he heard the soft, furtive footsteps of someone approaching. Carolyn, no doubt. The first time she'd hypnotized him, it had happened so smoothly he hadn't even realized it. But this time, Mr. Sterling, wake up. Carolyn gently shook his arm. Leo's eyes drifted open, and he let out a heavy yawn. "Carolyn," he mumbled, blinking as if surprised. "What is it?" "Her Highness has requested your presence. She said it was urgent." Carolyn leaned in closer. "Oh!" Hearing Ophelia's name, Leo forced his eyes fully open. In that instant, a silver pocket watch on a chain appeared before his eyes, swinging back and forth. A long, esoteric string of words, like an incantation, flowed from Carolyn's lips. For the first time, Leo saw her hypnotic induction in its entirety. He couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. It was the first time he'd seen anyone in this world use something that resembled actual magic. The hunter he'd met before only used alchemical gadgets, and the BSI's wizard was more of a biological mutation. Evelyn's blood magic was mysterious, but it was an innate talent of her vampiric lineage. What Carolyn was doing right now was a genuine magical ability. "You're so tired, so sleepy," she cooed, her voice a gentle whisper. "Why don't you rest, just for a little while?" His gaze followed the swinging watch, her voice a soothing melody, and his vision began to blur. He had to admit, it was an impressive trick. He suddenly felt as if he hadn't slept in 3 days, the exhaustion so profound he felt consciousness about to slip away. He let his eyes drift closed. Leo's mind entered a strange state, simultaneously hazy and crystal clear. This time, he wasn't unprepared. He had walled off a part of his consciousness. Before sleep took him, he repeated a mantra over and over in his mind. "What comes next is a dream, not reality." He repeated it once, 10 times, 100 times. Leo had read a few books on psychology in his old life, things like the interpretation of dreams. He treated them as little more than curiosities, never imagining the knowledge would one day become a lifeline. During his final confrontation with Ophelia before reloading, he had confirmed it. He was capable of inducing a lucid dream. He could remain conscious within the dream, even control his own actions. It was the only way he could navigate Ophelia's dreamlands without losing himself. The only way he could do what needed to be done. It was a peaceful afternoon, with a blue sky and cotton ball clouds. In this remote, rustic countryside, life moved at a different pace than it did at the palace. From a high window in the manor, a pair of pale eyes curiously surveyed the world outside. She didn't know what the farmers were so busy with. The cows and sheep in their pens looked so docile. Would they feel soft to the touch? The noisy children were gathered in a circle, playing with some fascinating toy she had never seen before. Ophelia had always yearned for the outside world, but she had never experienced it for herself. It wasn't that she didn't want to, she wasn't allowed. She was her father's second daughter, the youngest of the royal children. Her life shouldn't have been this lonely, this dull. Even her older sister's childhood had been different. She'd heard her sister had been a handful, so their father had summoned other noble girls her age to be her playmates. But Ophelia had no one. For a long time, she was locked away, forbidden from going outside, let alone making friends. She sadly tore her gaze away from the children's happy, excited faces. Her small frame curled by the window, the wind lifting strands of her silver-white hair. She knew why. They said that on the day she was born, a terrifying omen had appeared in the sky. Her mother had died in childbirth. They all said her birth would bring ruin and destruction to the empire. She'd overheard it from a young attendant, who said the archbishop of the church had proclaimed it. Later, she heard her father had the archbishop executed. Regardless, at a very young age, Ophelia understood. It was because of this that no one liked her. Her brothers and sisters despised her, never playing with her, never even acknowledging her. On the rare occasions she was granted freedom during a court gathering, the other noble children would give her a wide berth, treating her like a walking catastrophe. Even her own servants would sometimes whisper cruel rumors. The words hurt her, made her anxious. Gradually, Ophelia stopped talking. It was pointless. She learned early on that once prejudice takes root, no amount of explaining can ever weed it out. As the youngest royal heir, a child who should have been doted upon, Ophelia spent most of her days locked in a cold, remote wing of the palace. And as if that weren't enough, a few months ago, her father had banished her to this godforsaken countryside she'd never even heard of, completely cut off from the capital's splendor. But Ophelia was actually happy. She quite liked it here. The air was fresh, the scenery beautiful. Everything outside was new and exciting. Of course, it would be even better if she could actually go out and play. The sounds of laughter faded into the distance. Ophelia watched the children disappear from view, her eyes shimmering. When will I ever get to go outside? Is my whole life going to be spent in this gilded cage? What's the point of that? Little Ophelia lowered her head, despondent. Perhaps that day would never come. Just as she was sinking into despair, she heard a faint metallic tapping sound. Puzzled, she looked down. A boy, wearing a wool coat and a flat cap, dressed completely unlike the local farmers, appeared in her line of sight. He was standing just outside the estate's fence, looking up at her with a smile. Ophelia tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. Who was he? Strolling down the muddy country lane, Leo took in the familiar, yet subtly different, scenery. It was the same beautiful pastoral landscape, but the details were worlds away from the version Ophelia had replicated. For one thing, it was a lot dirtier. He'd nearly stepped in a fresh cow pie, something the compulsively clean Ophelia would never have rendered in her dream. And looking around, he could see farmers toiling in the fields, filling the air with a rustic, lived-in energy. This was proof enough. This was the remote village where they had first met all those years ago, not the polished suburb south of New Haven. He had gone back in time. Inside the dream, he had gone back. Leo walked until he reached a manor that looked so out of place in its rural surroundings. When he saw the little white-haired girl leaning on the windowsill, gazing down with wide, curious eyes, his theory was confirmed. That was Ophelia as a child. A smile touched Leo's lips as he looked at the pitiable little girl. Back then, Ophelia had been quiet, but she was infinitely cuter than the woman she would become. The adult Ophelia was guarded, cold, radiating a keep-your-distance aristocratic aura. That deadpan expression of hers always made him feel like he owed her money. Man, kids are so much better, he thought to himself. Looking up at her again, Leo grinned and tapped a metal fence. Ophelia's gaze shifted, landing on him. Her round eyes were filled with curiosity. Leo glanced around, making sure no one was watching. He gave her a little wave. Hey, little girl, want to come out and play? His tone was pure, unadulterated temptation. The girl immediately pushed open the window, the wind whipping her hair into a frenzy. She blinked, staring down at the strange boy. Are you talking to me? Leo shrugged. Of course. Who else would I be talking to? Ophelia's mouth formed a perfect, adorable O. It seemed she'd never had a stranger strike up a conversation with her before. Her long, tedious life in the palace, surrounded by looks of disgust and fear, had convinced her that she was a curse, an unlovable child. So, even though this strange boy was deeply suspicious, she gave his offer serious thought. She glanced nervously over her shoulder, then turned back, her eyes narrowing. Why do you want to take me out? What are you after? Leo put on a look of profound disappointment. Sigh. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. I just see you stuck at that window all day, looking lonely. I thought I'd take you out to have some fun. Ophelia hesitated, her small fists clenching and unclenching as she wrestled with the decision. Seeing his chance, Leo flashed her a disarmingly gentle smile. You really don't want to come out? I was going to show you something really cool. It's a limited-time offer, you know. The smile was genuine, but the words sounded exactly like someone trying to lure a kid into a windowless van. Do I really sound this much like a kidnapper? Leo wondered. Was I like this the first time we met? Probably not that different. In any case, she was desperate, and he was persuasive. Back then, Ophelia must have been so starved for freedom that she'd let herself be fooled. One little deception, and it had entangled them for a lifetime. I've never seen you before, Ophelia said, still wary. Who are you? Are you a bad person, trying to trick me? Leo sighed. He should have known she'd be a tough cookie, even as a kid. Hearing her question, he turned his back to her. Fine. Forget it. I thought you were brave. Since you're too scared to come out, I'm leaving. The moment he started to walk away, an anxious voice called down from the window. Don't go. Oomph. Who said I was scared? A triumphant smirk spread across Leo's face. He turned back, deftly vaulted the fence, and landed directly beneath her window. Ophelia was surprisingly bold. Without a moment's hesitation, she leaped from the high window. Leo caught her easily. She was light as a feather. Even from that height, she felt weightless in his arms. The little girl let out a belated gasp of fear, her moment of bravery spent. She clung tightly to his neck, only relaxing when she realized she was safe on the ground. Her big, round eyes were full of awe and longing as she stared at his face. With the utmost seriousness, she said, "You suspicious, strange big brother. You have to keep your promise." Leo broke into a brilliant smile. Of course, after the successful jailbreak, Leo led Ophelia to a nearby barn. He found an old straw poncho and bundled her up in it. She was so short that the hem dragged on the ground, making her look like a walking umbrella. The sight made Leo burst out laughing. "It kind of smells," Ophelia said, wrinkling her nose. "This is no time to be picky," Leo said, pulling the hood over her head. "This way, no one will recognize you." Ophelia nodded. "Oh." Leo crouched down to meet her gaze. "Are you hungry? Want me to get you something good to eat?" Her round eyes lit up instantly. Yes. What are we going to eat?" she asked, grabbing his arm. Leo took her small hand in his. "Whatever you want," he said with a grin. "I'm going to teach you all about the 5-finger discount." 5-finger discount? She blinked. "What's that?" "You'll see," he said mysteriously. "Just follow me." He led the giddy Ophelia down the bustling village path. It was clearly her first real trip outside. She was fascinated by everything, her head swiveling left and right. Windmills, irrigation ditches, mills, even the cows in their pens. She would stare at each new sight for ages, sometimes even reaching out to touch them. Leo let her run wild, but his eyes never left her face, studying her every expression. The joy, the excitement. It was all genuine, perfectly fitting for a girl her age. He had initially wondered if this was the adult Ophelia playing some kind of role-playing game with him, but now he was certain. This was truly the young her, not the calculating mastermind who had dragged him into the dreamlands. Or rather, this wasn't her, but a part of her subconscious. He had a good idea why. Ophelia hadn't recreated this scene to reminisce about the good old days. She was reshaping her own memories. It must have been the same last time, but he'd had no consciousness of his own then, no awareness that the story was slowly being twisted in the direction she wanted. She would subtly, imperceptibly alter the dream, repeating it 10, 100 times, until the brainwashing was complete and the fabricated memory overwrote the real one. But this time was different. This time, Leo remembered everything. Looking at the innocent little girl frolicking around him, the hidden plan in his mind resurfaced. The entire Dreamlands might be saturated with her will, but that didn't mean he couldn't make a few minor adjustments of his own. It was time to add some of his own material to the script. After helping Ophelia pilfer pears from an orchard and sample a variety of other free local delicacies, the little girl's thirst for adventure was far from quenched. She ran up and tugged on Leo's hand. "Strange big brother. The villagers say the market in town is super busy. You have to take me." Leo instinctively glanced at the sky. Even in the Dreamlands, the sun rose and set just like in reality. They'd already been out for a while. If they went to town now, it would be dark by the time they got back. Sensing his hesitation, Ophelia pouted. "If you don't take me, I'll scream and tell everyone in the village that you kidnapped a little girl." "Huh?" Leo blinked. Fearing he wouldn't agree, Ophelia crossed her arms, trying to look like a tiny adult as she laid out her scheme. "Then, I'll tell them I'm from that manor, and that you abducted an imperial noble. They'll never let you get away with it." Her little face was taut with seriousness. "Kidnapping a noble is a capital crime. If this gets out, you'll be sent to the gallows." Leo looked at her, shaking his head with a suppressed smile. Wow, sinister and ruthless at such a young age. "That's her, all right." He raised an eyebrow. "And what if I say no?" "No, don't even think about it." Ophelia's expression changed in an instant. She was terrified he wouldn't agree. She had heard the farmers talking. The town market was the most lively place for hundreds of miles. People from several villages went there to trade goods. There had to be tons of interesting things to see and do. She had to go. Suddenly, Ophelia clenched her fists and lifted her chin, her cheeks still round with baby fat. She tried to look down on the crouching Leo to project an air of superiority. "Listen here, commoner. If you agree to my request, I shall reward you by knighting you." "A knight?" Leo chuckled. "What's so great about being a knight?" That just shows your ignorance, she said dismissively. Knighthood is part of the imperial nobility system. Even the lowest rank is still a noble. As a commoner, you will rise to become one of the empire's elite. Is such an honor not enough for you? Leo burst out laughing at her serious, high and mighty act, as if she had the authority to knight anyone right now. Besides, he wouldn't want a noble title even if she could give him one. Did she really think she could buy him off with that? I'll pass on the nobility. But if you behave, I suppose I can take you. Really? The joy had barely blossomed on Ophelia's face when Leo's next move turned it to shock. He scooped her up and slung her over his shoulder. You, what are you doing? She shrieked. Was this kind-seeming big brother finally showing his true, sinister colors? Quiet down. Stop screaming. People are looking. Leo gave her a firm pat on the rear. The sting had a little extra force to it, a small dose of payback. Ow! Ophelia cried out in pain. What did I just say? Leo asked, his face a mask of indifference. Ophelia immediately clamped her mouth shut. She huddled on his shoulder, trembling. Seeing her eyes welling up with tears, her face crumpled and about to cry, Leo felt a strange sense of satisfaction. He gave her another punitive pat, for good measure. Finally, she went silent. Leo laughed inwardly. The tables had finally turned. And Ophelia this small, this helpless, this easy to push around. How could he resist teasing her a little? Where are you taking me? She asked in a small, shaky voice. Where do you think? He shot back with a glare. To town, of course. With those little legs of yours, it'll be dark before we even get there. Ignoring her stunned expression, he began walking toward the edge of the village with long, purposeful strides. South of New Haven, a new day dawned, soft sunlight spilling over the massive estate. In his bed, Leo slowly opened his eyes and yawned. He'd had a good dream. Because he'd programmed himself with the mental suggestions before falling asleep, he remembered everything clearly. In the dream, he'd taken young Ophelia to the town market, where they played until dark before he finally snuck her back to the estate. He must have fulfilled a long-held wish of hers, because as they were about to part, the little girl had clung to him, not wanting him to leave. Looking into her big, pleading eyes, Leo had almost caved. Thankfully, he made a quick getaway. The entire estate staff and half the village were out looking for her with torches. He hadn't dared to linger a second longer. If he hadn't run, they would have caught him for sure. Breakfast time. Dressed for the day, Leo went to the dining hall and saw Ophelia already waiting for him. Her pale eyes drifted toward him, her cool face devoid of emotion. Did you sleep well last night? Very well, Leo said with another yawn. Just didn't get enough. If the maid hadn't woken me, I could have slept all day. At that, Ophelia frowned slightly. You shouldn't sleep so long. The daytime is precious. Leo just shrugged noncommittally. After sitting down, he began to dig into his breakfast with gusto. Watching his complete lack of table manners, Ophelia sighed and shook her head. It seems we really need to work on your etiquette. Leo shot her an exasperated look. Seated across from him, Ophelia was a picture of elegance, eating with a slow, deliberate grace that was almost artistic. She was elegant, sure, but for some reason, Leo found he preferred the Ophelia from his dream, the one who happily ran around in the mud. The innocent, silver-haired little spitfire was way better. He sighed internally, setting down his knife and fork. The food on the table was the same monotonous, bland fare. Ever since he'd arrived, he'd been eating this stuff. In the Dreamlands, it had been the same menu for 10 years straight. He was sick of it. An idea struck him. He smiled at Ophelia. Do you remember what I told you before? She looked at him puzzled. What? Of course, Leo said, his voice laced with temptation, the part where I offered to cook for you myself. Ophelia's impassive face finally showed a flicker of interest. Really? You're really going to cook for me? Of course, Leo replied, his smile widening. His offer to use the kitchen was just a pretense. The real goal was to get a chance to cause some trouble. Mr. Sterling, this is the estate's kitchen. Ah, thanks. Leo followed Susan, the maid in charge of the kitchens, into the cavernous space on the ground floor. The air was thick with the scent of smoked meats. Ophelia, a notorious germaphobe, hadn't come down with him. The only person at his side was her trusted confidant, Carolyn. A few other maids and cooks lingered nearby, watching with curiosity. Pretending to survey the room, Leo quickly scanned their faces. Too many eyes. It would be difficult to get anything done. Show me what ingredients you have, he said offhandedly. Yes, sir, Susan replied immediately. She followed a step behind him, her own curiosity piqued by the young gentleman. It hadn't been long since Mr. Sterling had arrived at the estate, but his presence had brought about a massive change. Before, Her Highness spent most of her days buried in official duties, rarely paying attention to anything else. Her quiet nature cast a silent, somber mood over the entire manor. But since Mr. Sterling's arrival, Her Highness was like a different person. She spoke more, and smiles would occasionally grace her face. In just the past few days, she had smiled more than she had in the last several years combined. The transformation had left her longtime servants utterly dumbfounded. Of course, as servants, they wouldn't dare gossip about Her Highness's personal affairs. But Susan truly hoped Mr. Sterling would stay for a long time. His presence clearly made Her Highness happy. And they looked so good together, gentle with each other, never fighting. It was all so sweet. It wouldn't be so bad if the estate had a master like him. Susan thought to herself, if Leo knew what was going through the maid's head, he would have scoffed. He had no desire to spend another minute in this damn manor. All he wanted was to blow it up. That's right, blow it up. Leo did several laps around the enormous kitchen, memorizing the location of the adjacent Magitech boiler room. He also took mental notes of every cooking tool, appliance, and mechanical device powered by Ethereum. As the residence of one of the Empire's most powerful nobles, the luxurious estate was far more comfortable than it appeared, equipped with a climate control system that kept it perfectly temperate year-round. All thanks to the wonders of Magitech. But with comfort came a minor safety hazard. The infamous airship explosion that had rocked the capital was still fresh in the public's mind. The culprit had yet to be caught, and the entire city was on edge. So, even if Ophelia could use her power to keep him trapped here and suppress the news, what if a remarkably similar explosion were to happen again? An incident on that scale would be impossible for even the fifth princess to cover up. With that in mind, Leo looked at the maids gathered around him and deliberately put on a picky, dissatisfied expression. This is terrible. You don't have this, you don't have that. The kitchen of the fifth princess doesn't even have a single bag of rice. Don't you think people would laugh if they heard? Huh. Susan looked at him, confused. She hadn't realized Mr. Sterling planned to make a dish with rice. It was a rare ingredient in their usual diet. Mr. Sterling, what do you need? If you can make a list, I'll go out and purchase it for you right away. Leo smiled at her. Great, I need. After sending the maid off on a shopping trip, the kitchen staff thinned out a bit, but the ever-present Carolyn was still there. Leo wasn't in a hurry. He'd find a way to get rid of her eventually. He turned his thoughts to another matter. Party members. Anomaly 001. Evelyn Abraham opening the party interface. Leo could faintly sense her presence, a connection that hummed between them. While he couldn't summon her directly, he could issue certain commands to her regardless of the distance. Such as, release restriction-free combat mode. Party member may explore and engage in combat freely. And punishment command restraint mode summons a chain of pain, forcibly restricting party members' movement and lowering their corruption level. Leaning against the kitchen wall, Leo began to play. Release restriction punishment command release restriction punishment command. He imagined the look on his dear professor's face, all the way on the other side of New Haven, must be absolutely priceless. Of course, he wasn't just teasing her for the fun of it. He was reminding her of his existence. He hadn't known Evelyn for very long after containing her, and their relationship was strange. No one enjoys being locked up in an old house, unable to go anywhere with a new master figure suddenly in their life. Evelyn surely still resented him, probably celebrated inwardly when Ophelia had dragged him away. But Leo wasn't about to let her off the hook. She was his only remaining link to the outside world. To escape this estate, he was going to need her help. Letting her out after hearing of Ophelia's return had been a contingency plan. It was time to play that card. In a quiet alley in New Haven's East End, a shortcut out of the city, Evelyn walked briskly, a travel pack slung over her shoulder. Suddenly, a strange noise echoed from up ahead. Evelyn's senses went on high alert, blood magic coalescing in her palm. "Who's there?" she called out coldly. A black shadow flashed past, and several familiar black tentacles slithered into view. An expressionless Helena materialized before her. "You look like you're in a hurry," she said, her eyes scanning Evelyn's travel attire. "Are you trying to run away?" Recognizing her, Evelyn relaxed for a moment, then chuckled. "Run away? Do I need to report my travel plans to you now?" "That won't be possible." Helena continued to advance, her tentacles spreading out around her. Evelyn frowned. "Get out of my way. I have important things to do." "No." Helena's tentacles shot forward, completely blocking the narrow alley. "You're going to help me rescue my brother. You're not leaving this city until you do." Evelyn sighed and set down her bag. "Rescue Leo? Does he need rescuing? For all I know, he's on a romantic honeymoon with his old flame. I wouldn't want to interrupt their fun. Her flippant remarks struck a raw nerve. Honeymoon. Honeymoon. Helena shook her head frantically. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Brother. Brother doesn't like that weird woman. What's so great about her? He doesn't. That woman is as expressive as a block of wood. She has a terrible temper, and she's always looking down on everyone. My brother. He would never like someone like that. Helena repeated the words like a mantra, her expression shifting between agitation and anguish. Evelyn burst out laughing. For some reason, seeing her so worked up made her want to tease her even more. She narrowed her eyes, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Oh, she's not that bad. She's an imperial princess. She's royalty. The line of men trying to win her over probably stretches all the way out of the city. And, Evelyn added, seeing Helena was about to explode, I hear she is the most ethereal, transcendent beauty in the entire empire. Your brother is a young man, and they're all alone together. He's bound to lose control and fall completely for her. The more she spoke, the more agitated Helena became, until her face contorted into a dark grimace. That's not true. My brother isn't that shallow. Brother likes me the most. And besides, that woman just snatched him away, and we haven't heard anything since. Helena's fists clenched. He has to be in danger. Otherwise, he would have found a way to contact me. He wouldn't be out of touch for this long. Hearing that, Evelyn fell silent for a moment. In her heart, she knew Leo wasn't the type to enjoy having his freedom curtailed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to escape her, only to turn the tables and control her instead. So, maybe Leo wasn't actually enjoying himself. It didn't seem right. Though she hadn't known him long, Evelyn felt she understood him. He wasn't the kind of man to be easily swayed by a pretty face. Could he really be in danger? Life-threatening danger? What else would prevent him from getting a message out? The thought gave Evelyn pause. Wait, am I actually worried about him? She immediately shook her head, trying to clear it. That little monster, so much younger than her, but full of so many devious schemes. He was rotten to the core. I'm not worried about him at all. Evelyn crossed her arms with a dismissive sniff. He had plenty of old flames, not to mention this tentacled little sister who adored him. Worrying about him, that wasn't her job. With that, Evelyn snatched up her travel pack and turned back the way she came. You can stand here and think about it. I'm leaving. Don't block my way. She dissolved into a streak of crimson shadow, racing back down the alley. But Helena, persistent as a ghost, was right behind her. Don't go. You have to help me find my brother. The tentacles stretched out, once again sealing the narrow path. Oh, for heaven's sake! Evelyn groaned, exasperated. I'm just one little vampire. What power do I have to snatch Leo away from an imperial princess? Be realistic, will you? Besides, she said, deliberately hardening her expression as she looked at the worried Helena. I told you. I hate your brother. I have no intention of saving him. Her voice was filled with cold resentment. The words had barely left her mouth when a bizarre black chain materialized out of thin air. In an instant, it coiled around Evelyn's wrists, ankles, and other sensitive, vulnerable places. A strange, subtle, piercing sensation followed. NGH. The sound escaped her before she could stop it. Helena stared, surprised. What's wrong with you? I. Evelyn was seething. She knew instantly what was happening. Leo. Her furious, murderous scream echoed through the alley. But then, another wave of sensation. Evelyn instinctively hugged herself, her entire body trembling. She slid to the ground, unable to meet Helena's gaze, a suspicious blush creeping up her pale cheeks. This only confused the wide-eyed Helena even more. What is wrong with you? Why are you shaking all over? Evelyn clenched her fists, overcome with a mixture of shame and fury. Leo, stop messing around. Is this funny to you? But Leo couldn't hear her. Evelyn slumped to the ground, defeated. All thoughts of rebellion had vanished. She mumbled to Helena, Fine, I promise. I'll help you rescue Leo. That's great. Though she had no idea what had just happened, Helena's face lit up with joy. So what's the plan? First we find my family's housekeeper, Clarice. She's well-connected. She'll know how to find out where Leo is being kept. And then, NGH. Helena peered at her suspiciously. Seriously, what's wrong with you? Your face is so red. Are you sick? It's your brother. Evelyn wanted to murder Leo. That despicable, hateful man, making her humiliate herself like this. In broad daylight. This wasn't over between them, but then... Evelyn buried her face in her hands, utterly defeated and in no mood to speak. Tada! Presenting Golden fried rice. Dinner time, on the other side of New Haven's southern suburbs. A smiling Leo, wearing an apron, presented a plate of egg fried rice. He set it down in front of Ophelia, who raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting this to be the surprise he had been tinkering with in the kitchen for so long. This is... Ophelia hesitated, picking up her fork, but not taking a bite. Don't worry, it's delicious, Leo said confidently, plopping down next to her. Is it really that good? Ophelia glanced at the handsome, grinning face that had leaned in far too close, and the corner of her mouth twitched upwards. And what if it isn't? You know the consequences for tainting the palate of a princess, don't you? Leo scoffed. A stomach is a stomach. Yours isn't made of gold. Seeing her eyes narrow in a way that signaled impending anger, Leo quickly grabbed a spoon, scooped up a small bite, and held it to her lips with a grin. Hurry up and eat. It's getting cold. Come on, open up. Seeing his earnest expression as he held the food to her mouth, as if he were feeding a small animal, Ophelia couldn't help but smile. She parted her cherry-red lips. Leo promptly shoved a spoonful of rice in her mouth. It nearly made her choke. Cough, cough. Leo, you. She opened her eyes to see him still staring at her, his gaze full of concern. Moof. Ophelia shot him a glare and finally began to chew. A ripple of soft laughter came from the maids, who were trying to stifle their giggles behind their hands. Ophelia swept them with an icy look, and they quickly lowered their heads. So, how is it? Leo asked eagerly. As Ophelia chewed, she didn't think much of it first, but then a rich, savory flavor exploded across her taste buds. It's actually... She looked down at the plate of so-called golden fried rice. Grains of perfectly cooked rice were flawlessly coated in golden egg, shimmering enticingly. A subtle fragrance of scallions and ham hung in the air. The aroma made her swallow. She picked up her fork and took another bite herself. Then, without looking at Leo, she savored it for a moment. It really was quite delicious. She eagerly took a third bite and a fourth. A short while later, the entire plate was empty, much to the astonishment of her maids. They had never seen Her Highness eat with such an appetite. Was Mr. Sterling's cooking so good that he could create a dish rivaling the estate's master chefs with such simple ingredients? Or was it just the rose-tinted glasses of love? It must be the latter, thought Susan, the head kitchen maid. After all, this was a dish Mr. Sterling made personally for Her Highness. No one likes to be outdone in their own area of expertise. Seeing Ophelia devour the meal, Leo felt a surge of pride. This was nothing. He hadn't even brought out the big guns yet. There weren't many ingredients he could work with here. A simple plate of fried rice hardly showcased his true culinary skills. Of course, he wasn't really in the mood to put on a cooking show. His real goal was still to sabotage the kitchen. This dinner was a successful first step. If she genuinely liked his cooking, he'd have plenty more opportunities to get back down there. After dinner, just like always, Ophelia urged him to go to bed. Leo knew exactly what she had in mind. Lying in bed, he repeated his mental suggestions until the door creaked open and Carolyn, on her hypnotic mission, once again sent him into the world of dreams. A gentle breeze whispered through the green wheat fields, the dream's pastoral scenery as beautiful as ever. Leo walked at a leisurely pace toward the manor. Time moved quickly in the dream. It had been a while since his first encounter with the young Ophelia, and they had spent a good deal of time together. Every day, Leo would sneak near the estate, and Ophelia, having devised all sorts of clever ways to slip out, would join him for an adventure. His brazen behavior had, of course, attracted the attention of the manor's staff. A ridiculous rumor had begun to spread. Some wild hooligan has bewitched Her Highness's soul. But miraculously, this time Leo had managed to enter the massive estate, and through the front door, no less. This was because the dream's timeline had now progressed to the second chapter of the game he remembered playing. In the village, livestock were being brutally disemboweled and devoured by a mysterious, terrifying monster. As part of the mission, he had lied, claiming to be an experienced monster hunter, which had granted him legitimate entry into the manor's grand hall. The moment he stepped inside, a small, white-haired girl came running toward him. "Leo, you're finally here," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Ignoring the wary looks from the maids, she grabbed his arm and began dragging him toward her room. Leo said awkwardly to the maids, "I'm here to investigate. I need to search carefully for clues." Search for clues? The maids exchanged glances. Since when did searching for clues involve heading straight for Her Highness's private chambers? His excuse was flimsy at best. The head maid followed nervously behind them, terrified that this strange man was about to spirit her mistress away. She had no idea that this time, it was Leo who had been spirited away. "Could you maybe not be so enthusiastic?" Leo muttered, looking down at his arm, which was trapped in a vice-like grip. "You could at least pretend to be subtle." "No." Ophelia squeezed his arm tighter, as if afraid he'd pull away. "You're the knight I knighted. You're mine now," the little girl declared possessively. "Your person?" Leo looked at her, amused. "So what does my lady plan to do with her person?" "Whatever I want, of course." Ophelia sniffed. "I am the 5th princess of the empire, a person of immense dignity. Even if I deign to grace you with my presence, you are not allowed to resist." The headmaid, trailing behind them, gasped, her eyes wide with shock. Leo glanced back at the maid, then down at Ophelia's tiny, bean-sprout-like frame. He snorted with laughter. "Do you even know what grace with my presence means? Maybe don't use words you don't understand. You're going to give your maid a heart attack." Ophelia shook her head blankly. "I don't know, but I heard people in the palace say it. They said my older sister, at a very young age, Your Highness," the headmaid interrupted, cutting off the leak of any further court secrets. After being dragged to her room, Leo began his investigation with a serious expression. And it was just an investigation. With a stone-faced maid watching his every move, he had to keep up the act. He professionally took out several investigative tools from his bag and began examining the room. Ophelia was thrilled to have Leo in her room with her. It was the first time she'd ever had a guest over. Like any normal child, she immediately started sharing all her favorite toys and snacks. "Want something to eat, Leo? This is a delicacy from a vassal state. They say it's made from the smoked meat of a rare and hard-to-hunt beast. Leo, tea. This is the finest black tea from the Empire's largest merchant guild. Leo. Leo put down his tools and shot an exasperated look at the beaming Ophelia. The headmaid, standing by like a third wheel, looked about ready to explode. "We're supposed to be investigating a case, Leo sighed. "What's so fun about investigating? You're so boring." Ophelia grumbled, hopping on her bed with a stuffed animal and kicking her legs back and forth. "You have no idea," Leo thought with a wry smile. "Back in the day, I played this game as a detective story. It was a lot of fun." As he thought this, his eyes fell on the stuffed animal in her arms. "You like this?" Ophelia's eyes lit up, and she held out the plush toy. "Then you can have it." "No." Leo waved his hand. He was just thinking that the toy was big, cute, and clearly expensive, a custom-made model you couldn't find in any store. His mind instinctively flashed to Helena, who as a child never even had the cheapest of dolls. It must be nice to be rich, to have anything you want. As an imperial princess, even an unloved one, she had never lacked for material comfort. Ophelia, thinking Leo also liked toys, began proudly showing him her lavish toy cabinet. It was less a cabinet and more a small room, filled to the brim with all sorts of beautiful toys. The ones at the very back were covered in dust, clearly untouched. It was obvious Ophelia didn't actually care for toys. As she showed them off, she kept sneaking glances at Leo's face, ready to drop the tour at the slightest hint of disinterest. In her bright, excited eyes, Leo saw a deep yearning. A yearning for friends, for the freedom to play under an open sky. Materially, Ophelia wanted for nothing, but her inner world was a barren wasteland. While Ophelia was introducing him to her toys, Leo heard the maids outside chattering about something. He slowly pushed open the door and looked out. "What's all the noise?" Ophelia looked up, annoyed that her private time with Leo had been disturbed. They went into the next room to find a group of maids gathered by the window, trying to catch a small bird with a net. It was a tiny sparrow that must have flown in by accident when the window was open for ventilation. Now, it was terrified, flitting frantically around the ceiling. But its efforts were futile. The doors and windows were closed. It was trapped. Its chirps were sharp and piercing, like a desperate human cry for help. "It's a little bird." Ophelia's eyes widened. She pointed at it and said excitedly to Leo, "I love birds. Leo, go catch it for me." Leo shrugged. "I can't fly, and your ceilings are way too high. How am I supposed to catch it?" "I don't care. I don't care." Ophelia started to whine. "I want the birdie. I want the birdie." Seeing Leo remain unmoved, she grabbed his arm and started shaking it. "Please, Leo, go catch it for me. If you catch it, I'll give you a reward, okay?" Leo narrowed his eyes, a grin spreading across his face. "What kind of reward?" "Anything. Anything at all. Just name it." Ophelia seemed completely unafraid of him naming an outrageous price. Being rich meant being carefree. Leo chuckled and pointed his cheek. "You kiss me, and I'll go catch it for you." "Huh. Ophelia's eyes widened slightly, seemingly shocked that Leo would make such an indecent proposal. Leo crossed his arms and watched her with a wicked grin, waiting to see her reaction. Ophelia quickly glanced at the other maids. They were all busy trying to catch the bird. Only the head maid was watching the two of them like a hawk. The little girl seemed to hesitate for only a moment before stammering. "You better keep your word." With that, she pulled his head down. A light kiss landed on his cheek. It was cool and ticklish. Afterward, Ophelia lowered her head, her cheeks flushed red. Leo was surprised. He hadn't expected her to agree so easily. "You?" She looked up, her tone soft. "Why are you looking at me like that? You're my person. I can do whatever I want with you. Are you really that surprised?" Leo shook his head. He was more surprised that Ophelia was already showing signs of being a little tyrant at such a young age. The head maid, who had been on thief prevention duty, looked like her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. She had anticipated many things, but not that this wild hooligan would be so shameless, and certainly not that Her Highness would agree so readily. The head maid marched toward them, her face a mask of murderous intent, the muscles under her uniform practically bulging. Leo knew how formidable Ophelia's maids could be. He scrambled behind Ophelia with a sheepish grin. Ophelia's tiny frame stood protectively in front of him. Her face, which had been shy just moments before, was now completely blank. She stared at the head maid. "You didn't see anything just now." "Your Highness?" the maid exclaimed in shock. A cold glint entered Ophelia's pale eyes. "Your father works in my stables, doesn't he?" Though she was much smaller, Ophelia exuded an unmistakable air of authority. "You wouldn't want your father to be suddenly forced into retirement, or to encounter some other unforeseen accident, would you?" The head maid's body trembled as she stared at her princess in disbelief. A slow, cruel smile spread across Ophelia's lips. The maid slumped, defeated, and finally closed her mouth. Turning back, Ophelia winked at Leo. "Go on, then." Leo shook his head with a wry smile. This was probably the first time in her young life that she had truly wielded her power, much earlier than in reality. He turned, took a net for one of the maids, and looked up at the terrified bird flitting about the ceiling. This scene had played out in reality once before, but just now the timeline had deviated ever so slightly. This was exactly what he had intended. He was deliberately guiding Ophelia down an unknown path. Because this was a chaotic, non-linear dreamland, Ophelia's conscious mind probably wouldn't notice such a minor detail. She was too confident, too sure that this was her world to command, that everything would unfold according to her will. After several attempts, and to the gasps of the maids, Leo finally caught the little bird for her. Staring at the bird fluttering frantically in its new, ornate cage, Ophelia's smile grew wider and wider. "This is my first time having a pet. It's so energetic, always flying around. I'm so jealous. I wish I could fly. Is it hungry? Go get some grain, quickly," Ophelia ordered. Soon, the exquisite cage was filled with fresh water and fine seed. But the little bird wouldn't touch a thing. It just kept throwing itself against the bars, desperately trying to escape. "Why isn't it eating? Doesn't it like this food?" Ophelia asked Leo, her brow furrowed with worry. "You scared it." Leo soothed her. "You just need to give it some time to get used to things. It'll learn to love it here." "All right," Ophelia nodded, though she didn't seem to fully understand. "I have lots of good food here, and it's warm. It won't have to worry about being cold or hungry ever again. It will definitely learn to love it here." Leo looked at Ophelia, who was now completely captivated by her new toy. His own smile deepened. "Well, that's enough investigating for today. I'll see you tomorrow." "Okay." The next day, Leo returned to Ophelia's room as promised. He found her sitting by the cage, her face downcast and sullen. Leo peered inside. The bird was dead. "How? How could this happen?" Ophelia's voice was small. "What did I do wrong? Why did it die?" The little girl was completely baffled. She looked up at Leo, tears welling in her eyes. It was her first attempt at keeping a pet, and it hadn't even survived a day. It couldn't have starved. It had only been a day. Leo crouched down and saw that the bird's head was covered in blood, its feathers were a mess, and its hard beak was broken. It had bashed itself to death. The bird had spent the entire night throwing itself against the bars of the cage, until its head was a bloody pulp, until the last spark of life had been extinguished. "Leo, Leo," Ophelia tugged on his sleeve, pulling him from his somber thoughts. "Why did this happen? Say something." Leo sighed and stroked her hair. "Freedom. Freedom." Ophelia looked at him, confused. Leo held her gaze. A line from a movie he'd seen in his past life came to mind. Some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. He looked at the little Ophelia, his expression serious. A bird like this can't be caged. Its world is the vast, dangerous sky. If you really wanted what was best for it, you had to let it go. Otherwise, one day you'd open the cage to feed it, and it would fly away without a second thought. No matter how comfortable a life you gave it, to the bird, it would all be worthless. Is that true? Ophelia's little face fell. She mumbled the words to herself, still trying to grasp their profound meaning. At her age, she couldn't yet understand the concept of true freedom. For someone of her status, without Leo's guidance, she might never have made the connection, never realized the massive impact this event would have on her values. Leo had just planted a seed deep within her subconscious. Now, all he had to do was wait for it to bloom. Time flowed by in the dreamlands. On a morning when the flowers were in full bloom, a beautiful young woman in a white dress and a sun hat pushed open a gate and looked toward a figure sitting on a bench. He was often like this lately. Sometimes he would stare at the sea of flowers, sometimes at the blue sky, sitting in silence for hours on end. They had known each other for years, childhood friends who had played together in this countryside far from the city's hustle and bustle, teasing each other, lying in the grass and staring at the stars, talking about everything and nothing. He used to smile all the time, but ever since he had moved into her estate, the smiles had become rare. "Aren't you going to eat?" "Just sitting here, staring into space again." Ophelia sat down next to him, her eyes filled with concern. Leo glanced at her and offered a small smile. Probably just didn't sleep well. He was smiling, but it looked tired, forced. Ophelia knew that although he had adapted to the new memories she had created for him, it had come at a great cost. Carolyn's hypnosis was becoming less effective. His body was developing a resistance. They had to start using drugs to help him sleep, and overuse of those drugs. It certainly took a toll. But looking at his downcast expression, Ophelia felt it was more than just that. Even in the dream, Leo had become withdrawn. Ever since he had moved into the estate, he rarely smiled, and he seemed to have lost interest in everything. He was like a walking corpse, devoid of soul. "Come on, let's go eat." Leo took her hand, just as he always did, but Ophelia didn't move. A flicker of confusion crossed Leo's impassive face. Ophelia looked at him, a bitter smile on her lips. "You don't like it here, do you?" "It's not that I don't like it," Leo said, shaking his head. "It's wonderful here. The scenery is beautiful, the estate is luxurious. I have everything I could ever want for. And most importantly," he smiled at her and pulled her to her feet. "I have you." The sweet words swept away the clouds in Ophelia's heart, and she smiled happily. "Are you just bored being cooped up here? Not being able to go anywhere? If that's it, I could take you out for a walk." For a fleeting moment, a spark ignited in Leo's eyes, like a tiny flame, but it was extinguished almost immediately. "That would be nice," he murmured. "Though for me, it's all the same." Ophelia's mind went on high alert. Why would he say that? Does he know? But she quickly dismissed the thought as impossible. After countless sessions of memory reconstruction, a slow and steady process like boiling a frog, Leo had gradually adapted to his new memories. The new Leo, aside from his recent melancholy, was behaving perfectly normally. If this was all an act, it would be terrifying. No one could maintain such a flawless performance for so long. It was impossible. Ophelia was confident. In her domain, she was the creator of this dreamland. She controlled everything, including Leo. She discreetly studied his expression, concluding that he was most likely just feeling restless. For a man with an explorer's spirit etched into his very soul, being trapped forever in a beautiful prison, living the same day over and over, was bound to cause some dissatisfaction. Perhaps she should find a few cases for him to solve, or some other strange, miscellaneous tasks to throw his way. Maybe that would cheer him up. But even as she considered it, she hesitated. Making the dreamland more complex would inevitably create loopholes, and a man as sharp as Leo would surely notice something was amiss. With her current abilities, she could only maintain a small, contained dream world, not a truly immersive alternate reality. Lost in thought, a troubled Ophelia returned to the manor with Leo. Another exquisite breakfast was laid out, but Leo ate with no appetite. He took a few bites, offered a polite smile, and retreated to his room. Ophelia watched his lonely figure walk away, the sense of foreboding growing stronger. She felt like something terrible was about to happen. A Leo like this. It worried her deeply. "Your Highness, about today's writing lesson and afternoon tea." The dream version of Carolyn approached. Ophelia waved a hand dismissively. "Cancel them for now." The maids retreated. Ophelia stared at the long, empty dining table laden with beautiful food, her eyes flickering with an unreadable light. Time trickled by. One morning, The white-haired girl went to the flower garden to find Leo, as she always did. The bench was empty. The lonely figure that usually occupied it was gone. Ophelia frowned. He always sat here for a while. Why wasn't he here today? She turned and hurried back to the manor. Your Highness, breakfast is ready. Ophelia's eyes snapped to the dream Carolyn. Where is Leo? Mr. Sterling is likely still in his room. He hasn't gotten up yet, she replied. Leo had been in low spirits lately, so Ophelia had suspended all of his etiquette lessons and stopped having the maids wake him, wanting to let the lazy man sleep in. But he had already fallen into a routine. He always got up on time. An uneasy feeling began to creep into Ophelia's heart. Without another word, she rushed to his room. The door was shut tight. A sliver of darkness showed beneath it. He hadn't even opened the curtains. Sleeping this late? The feeling of dread intensified. She gently touched the doorknob, turned it carefully, and pushed. The door swung open. A piercing scream erupted from Susan, the maid beside her. Ophelia looked up, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Her gaze traveled from Leo's dangling feet up to the ceiling of the bedroom. A single bedsheet, twisted into a rope, was strong enough to hold him. His body was suspended in the center of the room. The slight draft from the open door caused his already rigid form to sway gently. The maids rushed in, trying to get him down. But Ophelia was frozen, standing rooted to the spot, unable to believe the scene before her. The maids frantically tried to save him, but it was too late. As they moved him, his contorted, ashen face turned toward her. Ophelia stared at Leo's corpse, her mouth opening as if to say something, but no words came out. The world began to spin. Everything blurred. How? Why? Why did he die? Why would he kill himself? This has to be a joke. She covered her mouth, her body racked with violent tremors. An overwhelming wave of emotion washed over her. Guilt, remorse, regret. Is it because of me? It has to be. Did I push him too hard? Did I suffocate him? As if from a great distance, a memory surfaced in her mind. Of a bird, a poor bird, trapped in a cage, that had bashed its own head in until it died. Even with food piled high, even in a warm room safe from all predators, it still yearned for the boundless sky. It had yearned for freedom, even as it threw itself against the bars until its last breath. Ophelia's legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. So, it was me. I'm the one who did this to him. My selfishness, my obsession. It drove him to this. Your Highness. The maids tried to help her up. Ophelia didn't respond. She simply moved forward, her hand reaching out to touch Leo's cold, pale cheek. Her normally clear, pale eyes were now bloodshot. He can die. This can happen to him? To this man who was always joking, always smiling? Didn't he say he had 9 lives? Ophelia stared at his body, then at the curtains fluttering in the breeze. And suddenly, her eyes flew wide. Wait, a dream. This is a dream. This is a dream. The dreamlands were so immersive, so real, that she had completely forgotten. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. There was still a chance. There was still a chance to change it. In a luxurious bedroom in the east wing of the estate, south of New Haven, the warm sunlight piercing through a gap in the curtains fell on Leo's face. In the real world, it was already late morning. He yawned, threw back the soft covers, and stretched. It had been another long dream. These lucid dreams were always exhausting. He felt like he could fall right back asleep. Only then did he begin to recall what had happened. It was always like this. Lucid dreaming didn't mean he had a perfect, synchronized memory. Every morning, he had to concentrate for a while to piece together the fragmented events of the dream. Just as he was about to start his usual mental reconstruction, his bedroom door was thrown open with a bang. Leo jumped, startled. He looked up to see a haggard-looking Ophelia standing in the doorway. What's wrong with you? Leo asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. Didn't you sleep well? The moment she saw him, she rushed forward. Leo, thinking she'd somehow discovered his meddling in her dream, scrambled to get up. But she threw herself at him, her arms wrapping around his waist in a death grip. He felt a dampness spread across the front of his pajama shirt. He looked down, confused. She was crying. Are you okay, Ophelia? Leo gently patted her back. Her body was shaking with sobs. Seeing her like this, he quickly ransacked his memory of the dream, trying to figure out what had happened. Leo. Ophelia's voice was muffled against his chest. Fragments of the dream flashed through his mind, and suddenly he understood. You had a nightmare, didn't you? He said with a helpless smile, offering the only comfort he could. It's okay. It's over now. Ophelia stayed buried in his arms for a long time before she finally looked up. Her bloodshot eyes stared at his face, as if afraid he would vanish at any second. "Thank God. You're alive. You're alive." Leo held her gently. "Of course I'm alive," he said with a soft laugh. "Otherwise, are we meeting in hell right now? I thought I would never see you again. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." She kept murmuring, lowering her head again. "What are you sorry for?" Leo asked, feigning confusion. But Ophelia didn't explain. She just buried her face in his chest and, as if a dam had finally broken, began to wail. Leo shot an exasperated look toward the door, where Carolyn and Susan were peering in anxiously at their sobbing mistress. He gave a slight wave, and they quietly closed the door. Finally, the only sounds in the room were her cries, and Leo's silent laughter. He looked down at her, a strange smile on his face. It wasn't a comforting smile. It was closer to a sneer. "This is just the beginning. The masterpiece of being forced to live with the loss of the one you love most. The eternal pain and torment branded onto your subconscious. An aesthetic of lifelong regret, custom-made just for you." And she was going to savor every last drop. It was a bright, sunny morning. Ophelia cried for a long time, clinging to Leo in his bed without letting go. After releasing all her pent-up emotions, perhaps because her frayed nerves had finally given out, or perhaps simply from exhaustion, she buried her head in the warmth of his embrace and fell into a deep sleep. Even then, her hands remained locked around his waist, as if terrified he would disappear. Leo looked down at her. Her pale face was stained with tears, her hair a mess, and her expression was troubled, like a fragile, easily shattered glass vase. He had never seen this side of her, this vulnerable, quiet Ophelia. The proud, domineering princess who always had a cold word for him seemed to have vanished in an instant. Leo sighed internally. If you knew it would come to this, why did you have to be so extreme? Perhaps in the environment where Ophelia grew up, she had never learned the meaning of the word respect. Her life philosophy consisted of only two states, controlling or being controlled. Only by completely controlling him could she feel secure. That was her way of expressing love. It was a twisted, suffocating love, and he had to change it. Gazing at the peaceful face so close to his, he knew her obsessive personality wouldn't let her give up easily. He didn't know if today's events would make her abandon her plan, but if she continued to disappoint him, she would pay the price. Today was just the beginning. It was noon before the two of them finally woke up. The moment Ophelia's eyes opened, she searched for Leo's face. Only when she saw him right there beside her did she let out a breath of relief. Leo clutched his stomach with a pained expression. He hadn't even had breakfast before he was forced to comfort a weeping Ophelia, and they had both slept straight through to midday. The hunger hit him like a physical blow. He was starving. Seeing his expression, her pale eyes immediately filled with concern. "Are you not feeling well?" she asked worriedly. "Should I call a doctor?" She started to get up. "I'll go get the best doctor in the capital right now." The person we need right now isn't a doctor, it's a chef, Leo thought. Ophelia blinked. Then, her own stomach rumbled in perfect harmony with his. She let out a small, helpless laugh. "Oh, we're just hungry, right? We haven't eaten a thing." She immediately called for the maids waiting outside the door. This time, however, she gave patient, detailed instructions for their lunch. "Don't make this anymore. Leo doesn't like it." "What? It's my favorite? I don't like it anymore. Take it away." "Yes, add some of this. It's nutritious and healthy." Let me think. He probably likes rice and things like that." Her voice faded as she moved down the hall, followed by the sound of bustling footsteps. Watching her fuss over everything, Leo felt that the Ophelia who had woken up was a little different. The lunch that followed was the most satisfying meal Leo had eaten since arriving at the estate. All the fancy gourmet dishes like foie gras, snails, and caviar were gone. In their place were dishes that suited his Eastern palate: rice, stir-fries, and even a decent approximation of braised pork belly. He made the braised pork for her a few days ago when he was in the kitchen, and honestly, she hadn't liked it much. It was probably an unfamiliar taste, or maybe the local spices just weren't right. Even he hadn't been satisfied with the flavor. But to his surprise, Susan, the kitchen maid, had managed to replicate it almost perfectly. The royal cooks were clearly very skilled. Watching Leo eat with such gusto, Ophelia's eyes softened into a smile. The anxiety that had plagued her since the morning finally began to ease. From now on, whatever you want to eat, just tell Susan. She's a very fast learner. She'll do her best to make it for you. Leo looked at her, amused, and deliberately asked, "What's gotten into you today? Why are you being so nice to me?" Before, a probing question like that would have sent her corruption level soaring and made her angry. But now Ophelia just smiled gently. Nothing. I'm just happy when I see you happy. Really? Leo said, still eating, as he reached across the table for a roasted pork trotter. With a complete disregard for hygiene, he picked it up with his hands and took a large bite. The sight finally made Ophelia's brow furrow. Leo had thrown the past few days of etiquette lessons out the window, but he was doing it on purpose. This is the only way to really enjoy meat, he declared, as if to provoke her further. He tore off a piece and held it out to her with a grin. Here. Now, even the maids were frowning. So crude, so ill-mannered. How could our dignified, elegant princess possibly eat like that? And yet, Ophelia hesitated for only a moment before her slender, pale fingers took the piece of pork from him. She didn't cut it, nor did she use any utensils. Instead, copying Leo, she simply held it and began to eat. Carolyn's eyes were wide with shock. What had happened to her highness? Had she been brainwashed after sleeping in Leo's bed? Leo watched Ophelia with a playful smile. Although the action itself was unbecoming, she ate in small, delicate bites. Even something as messy as gnawing on a pork trotter looked impossibly graceful when she did it. Leo shook his head and chuckled. She'd grown up in that environment, after all. That elegance was probably etched into her bones. After finishing, Ophelia dabbed her mouth with a napkin and silently watched him again. It seemed she had no interest in eating herself. She just wanted to watch him eat. Her intense stare was making him uncomfortable. He glanced over and noticed she was sitting extremely close to him, her pale eyes filled with a soft, contented glow. Seeing him pause, she asked gently, "Is it too dry? Do you want some water?" Before he could answer, she beckoned a maid over, and a glass of warm water was placed in his hand. "Drink more water. It's good for you. You haven't been sleeping enough lately," she said, her eyes brimming with an unshakable worry. She sounded like an overprotective mother, fussing over her child's health. Leo felt a shiver run down his spine. He couldn't get used to this gentle Ophelia. He knew it was probably born of guilt, but it still felt incredibly strange. He actually preferred the cold, domineering Ophelia. At that moment, a deep, troubling thought crossed Leo's mind. Wait, am I a masochist? There's no way I'm actually into this, right? He felt ridiculous. But then again, since coming to this world, he hadn't met a single normal woman. His tastes were being forcibly warped. Evelyn was almost normal, at least at first. But after she'd shown her true colors, the gentle professor had vanished, replaced by a perpetually angry, Sundara vampire. Thinking of this, Leo couldn't help but laugh. Ophelia, watching his expression, pushed the glass of water closer to him. Leo looked at her, confused. "You misunderstood. I'm not thirsty." Her pale eyes, though still gentle, held a hint of an emotion that could not be refused. "Drink more water." Her tone made it clear that this was not a negotiation. He was going to drink that water. As if by magic, Leo felt a wave of relief wash over him. The Ophelia he knew was back. This was her. A control freak's need to control doesn't just disappear, it just changes form. Before, it was malicious control. Now, it seemed to have transformed into benevolent control. Leo raised a glass and, under Ophelia's watchful gaze, drank every last drop. Seeing the empty glass, she finally relaxed. "Good boy," she cooed. "That's better now." She then picked up a piece of vegetable, her expression still gentle, and held it to his lips. "You have to eat your vegetables, too. It's healthy." A sudden knock echoed through the old house on Riverfront Road. In the living room, Evelyn stirred slightly, shifting on the sofa where she was in the middle of her daily skincare routine. "Hold on a sec," she called out towards the door, stretching languidly before sauntering over. She opened it to find Helena standing outside, face impassive, wrapped in a heavy coat. "Well," Evelyn said, looking her up and down. "Right on time, aren't we?" With that, she turned and ambled back inside. "Take your shoes off. Slippers are in the second cabinet on the left. Oh, and don't forget to close the door." "I know. You don't have to tell me." Helena snapped at her retreating back, rolling her eyes. She paused, her gaze lingering on the threshold. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped into the living room. She hadn't been back since the fight that had torn the place apart. Her eyes scanned the familiar space. Aside from the new furniture that had replaced the shattered originals, everything was just as she remembered it. The sight filled her with a profound sense of nostalgia, pulling her back to the days when she and her brother had lived here together. But when her gaze fell on the sofa, one thing stuck out like a sore thumb. That woman, lounging on their sofa in her pajamas like she had no manners at all. Her feet were bare, and the coffee table was a disaster zone of human snack wrappers. To top it off, she had a sheet mask plastered to her face and was humming a little tune while reading the newspaper. A flash of irritation surged through Helena. Did she really think she owned the place? Just as Helena was about to lose her temper, Evelyn spoke again without looking up. If you want something to drink, help yourself. There's black tea in the cabinet. The tone was so casual, so natural, as if she were the lady of the house, and Helena was the guest. Helena's eyes turned cold, and a chill spread through the room. My, you've certainly made yourself comfortable, haven't you? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Evelyn, of course, caught the passive-aggressive jab. She sat up straight, peeling the mask from her face. And why shouldn't I? She retorted with a smile. I'm the tenant of room 001, after all. You, on the other hand. Her smile twisted into a taunt. You still don't have the nerve to let your brother contain you. You don't even have the nerve to live here. If he wasn't gone, you probably wouldn't have even stepped through that door, would you? Seeing Helena's growing agitation, Evelyn's smile widened mischievously. So who are you to talk? You should know, my relationship with your brother is much deeper than yours now. The words were like a lit match. Helena's tentacles nearly burst from her back, but she clenched her fists, forcing them down. She stared at the infuriating woman's face, fighting the urge to kill, and took a deep, calming breath. I'm here to figure out how to save Leo. Let her be smug for a little while. When he gets back, she'll get what's coming to her. After talking herself down, Helena sat on the armchair farthest from the sofa. The search for my brother, she asked coldly. How is it going? Getting down to business. Evelyn finally shed her lazy demeanor. She slapped the newspaper down on the coffee table. I'm working on it right now, aren't I? Working on it. Helena eyed her skeptically. Eating snacks and reading the paper counts as an investigation. Evelyn shot her a look of disdain. That just shows how little you know. Even your brother makes it a habit to read the new papers every day. A lot of crucial information is buried in these mountains of text. Seeing Evelyn's serious expression, Helena gave a hesitant nod. So she really is investigating. Maybe she's not as careless as I thought. Maybe she does care about this. So have you found any leads? Helena pressed. Evelyn looked at her with an intensely serious expression. Helena leaned forward, her own face growing stern. What is it? She asked, full of expectation. Evelyn shook her head. Nothing. Helena shot to her feet, murder in her eyes. I know you're anxious, but you need to calm down, Evelyn said, holding up her hands with a weary smile. The people who took him are powerful. It's easy for them to cover their tracks. I've already contacted my network of friends, people from all walks of life. I've also reached out to my family for help. If they find anything, they'll contact me immediately. Remembering that this woman had once been a noble, Helena's anger subsided slightly. She sat back down, her eyes falling on the newspaper. The front page headline was still the airship bombing she'd witnessed firsthand. You've been focused on this case? She asked, confused. What does this have to do with saving my brother? A cryptic smile spread across Evelyn's face. Oh, it has everything to do with it. How? Helena watched her, baffled. She remembered Leo saying it was likely an assassination attempt on Ophelia. But since the princess survived, the crisis was over. What did it have to do with rescuing him now? We're having a guest over shortly. When he gets here, you'll understand, Evelyn said, her smile maddeningly mysterious. Helena was even more confused now. Evelyn looked like she had everything under control, as if she already had a solution. This is no time for games, she muttered in frustration. The two sat in silence for a long while, waiting for Evelyn's guest. They exchanged a few words here and there, always about Leo. Finally, just as the evening rush hour began to choke the steam-powered city, another knock came at the door. Helena hurried to answer it. To her surprise, it was Captain Raymond's. Oh, you're both here, the captain said, making himself at home as he hung his hat and coat before striding inside. Good evening, Captain, Evelyn said with a welcoming smile. Sorry I'm late. Captain Raymond's looked exhausted. He sank into the sofa and sighed. We've been working overtime, investigating every suspicious person in the city, checking for explosives, and the worst part is dealing with the city council members demanding answers. If I hadn't taken a personal day to come here, I don't know when I would have gotten a moment's rest. Thank you for everything, Captain, Helena said gratefully, pouring him a steaming cup of black tea. Oh, thank you. The captain took the cup, his eyes lingering on Helena for a moment. He remembered her from the restaurant, the young woman with Leo. He'd assumed she was his girlfriend, but on the way back to the station, it had clicked. He'd seen her 4 or 5 years ago. She was Leo's sister. The little girl had just grown up, blossomed, and he hadn't recognized her. He'd gotten it all wrong. He almost thought they were a couple. In that case, Leo's actual girlfriend must be the young professor on the other sofa. He'd met her once before. He hadn't expected her to contact him personally, begging him to look into Leo's disappearance. Captain Raymond's glanced at Evelyn, thinking to himself, that Leo is one lucky kid. There's a bit of an age gap, but it wasn't that noticeable. Besides, wasn't it trendy for younger guys to date older women these days? About your boyfriend, Captain Raymond's continued. I've been looking into it on my own time. He disappeared the night of the bombing. I couldn't access the carriage registry for vehicles leaving the city, not when royalty is involved. But one of my informants told me several high-class black carriages were seen leaving the south side of the city, so we can at least confirm the general direction he was taken. As he finished, Evelyn and Helena shot to their feet at the same time. The south side, boyfriend, their priorities seemed to be slightly different. If he left from the south, Evelyn thought, based on the faint connection between us, he can't be too far. He's likely just south of New Haven, maybe in the suburbs or a nearby town. Helena, however, was focused on something else. Boyfriend? How can my brother be this woman's boyfriend? Her gaze, now dangerously cold, slowly shifted to Captain Raymond's. The captain had no idea what was happening, but he felt the temperature in the room plummet. Is a window open? Why is it so cold in here? He muttered, shivering as he took a sip of hot tea. He only got one sip before Helena snatched the cup out of his hand. She glared at him, furious. If it weren't for her brother, she wouldn't be playing hostess at all. If this were any other time, the captain wouldn't be drinking this tea. He'd be drinking the other kind of tea she'd served Evelyn the first time they met. Captain Raymond's blinked, looking at Helena in bewilderment. What had he done to offend her? Leo's sister had a very strange temper. Evelyn covered her mouth, her eyes dancing with amusement. The awkward tension in the old house hung in the air for a moment before the conversation returned to the matter at hand. Evelyn looked at Captain Raymond's. Captain, would it be possible for you to dispatch some officers? If we could start by searching the southern suburbs, I believe many of the wealthy nobles and merchants who dislike the city smog have estates out there. If we can pinpoint which house Leo is being held in, Helena and I can handle the rest. Captain Raymond's listened intently, but a troubled expression soon crossed his face. It's not that I don't want to help, he began, his voice strained. Right now, the entire department's resources are tied up in the bombing investigation. The fallout is massive. His Majesty the Emperor is furious and wants this solved yesterday. We simply don't have the manpower to spare. I see. Evelyn nodded with a smile. Either way, thank you for coming, Captain. We appreciate you taking the time when you're so busy. Captain Raymond's gave a tired smile. Don't mention it. I owe Leo. You could say I wouldn't be where I am today without him. Now that he's in danger, I won't stand by and do nothing. Since you put it that way. Evelyn looked at him, her smile returning. I have an idea. It might solve this entire problem. What is it? Raymond's asked, intrigued. Please, if it's within my power, I'll help. Evelyn's smile turned inscrutable. She looked from the captain to Helena. Helena couldn't wait any longer. Just say it. Stop being so mysterious. Evelyn's expression became deadly serious. She spoke each word with deliberate weight. Leo Sterling is a potential suspect in the airship bombing. What? Helena and Captain Raymond's eyes went wide simultaneously. How could my brother be the bomber? Helena exclaimed in disbelief. She rushed to explain. He was with me the entire day. He was almost killed in the blast. Have you lost your mind? How could he possibly be a suspect? Evelyn gave her a disappointed look before turning her attention back to Captain Raymond's. The captain's initial shock gave way to confusion, and then a sudden spark of understanding lit up his eyes. That's it. Of course. Leo Sterling is a suspect in the airship bombing. Helena was completely lost. Now the captain was in on this insane joke. What were they talking about? Then, in the next instant, it clicked. She stared at Evelyn, who was smiling silently. You want to blow this whole thing wide open? See? You're not as slow as you look, Evelyn said with a smirk. A moment ago, that kind of jab would have earned her a fight. But now, Helena was practically buzzing with excitement. It felt like a hopeless situation suddenly had a way out. So what if their opponent was a member of the royal family with immense power? This was a case that had enraged the emperor himself. If they used the pretense of arresting a suspect named Leo Sterling, they could search every single noble estate in the South, tear them apart brick by brick, and none of those aristocrats could say a single word in protest. Unconsciously, Helena found herself staring at the confident smile on Evelyn's face. This woman, who seemed as lazy as a pampered cat, was capable of delivering such a fatal blow when she got serious. No wonder Leo valued her so much. A strange, sour feeling, something like jealousy, welled up inside her. After seeing off the harried Captain Raymonds, the two women sat in silence. Hope was on the horizon, but Helena couldn't shake her anxiety. "There's been no word from my brother for so many days," she murmured. Knowing him, he would never submit to being imprisoned like this. She thought of him, her heart aching. He must be in so much danger right now, suffering in pain. "Leo, you're on my hair." In front of a warm fireplace, Ophelia, lounging on the sofa, shot an annoyed glare at a perfectly innocent-looking Leo. He sighed and shifted, putting a little more distance between them. Looking at her as she smoothed her silver-white hair, he pouted internally. It wasn't his fault. She was the one who had practically draped herself over him. But the moment he moved away, her arms found their way back around him, as if she were permanently attached. "Are you trying to go bald? Why are you still so close?" Leo said, putting down his newspaper to glance at her. In response, Ophelia just grinned and pointed her hair, which was now neatly tied up in a bun. Leo rolled his eyes. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with a cozy warmth. The two of them were nestled on the large sofa, reading the paper by the bright firelight. Ever since she'd dropped her cold, imperious facade, it was like she was a different person. They spent the entire day together. Wherever Leo went, she followed. She was even willing to let him read the latest newspapers now. During his time here, Leo had been completely cut off from the outside world, a tactic to crush any thoughts of escape. But today, when he'd mentioned wanting to see a paper, she had actually brought him a fresh stack from that morning. It was amazing what a single dream could do. But then again, the dreamlands were a reflection of her subconscious. She thought she could use it to influence him, but she never realized the influence went both ways. When she witnessed the raw, shocking vision of her own death, the seed of doubt he had planted unknowingly had taken root. She could only conclude that her own actions had led to that tragic outcome. Guilt, remorse, and regret had festered and grown. She'd been tiptoeing around him all day, terrified that the real Leo might also fall into despair. After all, due to the drugs, he had been noticeably withdrawn lately. Everything was eerily similar to what had happened in the dream, and it terrified her. After they finished with the papers, Ophelia hesitated for a moment before leaving, using her usual excuse of official business. Watching her go, Leo pondered. Is she going to have Carolyn hypnotize me again? Is she still clinging to that plan? But he dozed on the sofa for a long time, and Carolyn never appeared. It seemed Ophelia really was busy. The daily hypnosis sessions had finally stopped. Leo let out a quiet sigh of relief. It felt like things were finally moving in the right direction. But that didn't mean he was letting his guard down. He would continue to watch Ophelia's every move to see if she would truly change. The heavy cloud cover had finally broken, leaving behind a sun-drenched afternoon. Leo lounged in a reclining chair by a mirror-like blue lake, soaking in the warmth. Weather this good was a rare treat. As he relaxed, he heard soft footsteps approach from behind. He was about to look up when a thick overcoat was draped over his shoulders. Ophelia looked down at him with a scolding expression. "The weather's been so unpredictable lately. Why did you come out dressed like that?" Leo looked into her pale eyes and saw genuine concern. "I've been out here all day," he said with a sigh. "Look, I'm sweating. I'm not cold at all." He started to shrug off the heavy coat. "Absolutely not." Ophelia firmly pushed it back onto his shoulders, wrapping it around him so tightly he felt like a burrito. "We have to take the carriage back soon. The wind will be cold, and you'll catch a chill." Her tone was gentle, but her eyes left no room for argument. Leo could only smile wearily and surrender to the smothering warmth of the coat. She'd been like this for days, nagging him like his own mother. She fussed over his physical and mental health, terrified he would try to kill himself in the real world, too. He hadn't been to the Dreamlands in several days. She had put a stop to Carolyn's daily hypnosis sessions. Not only that, but she also let him sleep in, no longer enforcing a strict schedule. Even the grueling etiquette lessons had been canceled. Leo's days were now a simple routine of eating, strolling, sunbathing, and sleeping. While everything seemed to be improving, her control-freak tendencies hadn't vanished. They just shifted focus. The coat incident was one example. Forcing him to eat more vegetables and drink hot water were others. She was doing it for his own good, of course, which made it all the more infuriating. He couldn't even argue with her. The classic, "I'm only doing this because I love you" defense. Unbeatable. Leo's gaze returned to the serene blue lake. They were about 5 miles east of the estate, where a tributary of the main river had formed a beautiful lake in a low-lying basin. The scenery was picturesque, a popular getaway for the city's wealthy. But today, the normally bustling lakeside was nearly deserted, occupied only by Leo, Ophelia, and a few maids. It was as if they had the entire resort to themselves. It didn't take a genius to figure out why. Ophelia had cleared the area for him. As they sat talking in the sun, Leo let his eyes drift around, pretending to admire the view while actually scouting the environment. The moment he saw the lake, he knew exactly where they were, the southeastern corner of New Haven. The area had once been a vast forest, a royal hunting ground, but was now dotted with villas built by the rich to escape the city's smog. Knowing his location, Leo mentally mapped out at least 3 or 4 escape routes, which way led back to the city, which way led to other towns. But they were just thoughts for now. A few black-clad figures, impossible to shake, were always patrolling the perimeter. They were Ophelia's shadow guards, each one absurdly powerful. Escaping from under their noses would be next to impossible. Unless he got some outside help. With nothing better to do, Leo idly sent a few more reminders to Evelyn. Release, restriction, punish, command, release, restriction, punish, command. He wondered what it felt like on her end. He didn't have to wonder too hard. She was probably fuming like a cat with its fur on end, screaming, "Leo, I'm going to kill you." "You're smiling. What are you thinking about?" Ophelia asked curiously from beside him. A grin touched Leo's lips. "Just some pleasant thoughts." Seeing him in a good mood, she asked with concern, "These past few days, are you feeling all right?" "Now that you mention it." Leo timed it perfectly, pressing a hand to his forehead and hissing. "I keep getting these splitting headaches out of nowhere. My head feels so foggy." It's strange. He did feel some discomfort occasionally, but he was laying it on thick. The old Ophelia wouldn't have cared. In the last timeline, she had worried he was regaining his memories and had actually increased the dosage, nearly frying his brain. This time, however, Ophelia's face fell. She shot to her feet, her soft hand pressing against his forehead, stroking it gently. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. "Are you sure? Why would you still have headaches after resting for days? Should I call another doctor for you?" "I think I'll be fine," Leo said with a weak smile. "No, absolutely not." Ophelia's voice became sharp. "This won't do. This won't do at all." Her eyes were bloodshot as she mumbled the words over and over, her self-talk verging on terrifying. "Ophelia?" Leo asked. "What's wrong?" Right now, she was the one who looked like she needed a doctor. It's nothing, I'm fine." Ophelia instinctively avoided his gaze, unable to meet his eyes. She looked down, her voice shrinking. Let's just go back. I don't like it here." Seeing her spiraling, Leo could only nod. "All right, let's go back." "Yes, let's go back." The black carriage sped down the path back to the estate, kicking up sprays of mud. Inside the dim carriage, Leo watched Ophelia's silent profile, lost in thought. Was she feeling guilty? She hadn't been able to look him in the eye, as if consumed by remorse. It reminded him of that morning when she had thrown herself at him, sobbing. It was the same emotion. Regret was a good thing, a normal human emotion. For someone as obsessive as her, it was an even better sign. Watching her, Leo had almost believed she had truly changed. However, one evening, a few days later, Leo went to her office under the pretense of checking on her. His heart sank. The atmosphere in the room was dark and oppressive. When she saw him, Ophelia, her face pale and drawn, spoke with a hint of reproach. "It's so late. Why aren't you in bed?" Her voice was still soft, just like always. But her status info betrayed her. Ophelia affinity, 100 corruption level, 59 threat level, 3 stars, dangerous. Leo hid his shock, keeping the smile on his face. "What are you working on? Why aren't you sleeping either?" She had been holed up in her room for days, researching something. Leo glanced casually at her desk. It was a chaotic mess of white papers covered in dense, intricate drawings. It's nothing." She hurriedly gathered the papers, trying to hide them from him. She looked back at Leo, forcing a tired smile. "I'm just handling some official business. Don't worry about me. Go get some sleep before your headaches come back." Leo nodded and gave her a gentle reminder. "Okay, you get some rest soon, too. Don't stay up so late." Ophelia nodded, her smile soft. Leo left the room. The moment he gently closed the door behind him, the smile vanished from his face. Late that night, as Leo lay in bed feigning sleep, he heard his door creak open. A set of light footsteps approached and stopped beside his bed. The scene was all too familiar. It had to be Carolyn. So, Ophelia hadn't given up on her plan after all. A wave of pure disappointment washed over Leo. The dark magic of hypnosis followed, and soon his eyes grew heavy, his mind sinking into a familiar fog. As he fought to maintain his lucidity in the dream, an image of Ophelia's increasingly haggard face flashed in his mind. Creating a dreamland came at a cost. An ability tied to the power of an elder god was bound to cause severe corruption and backlash. This time, however, he felt no sympathy, only a cold resolve. You chose this, Ophelia. Now, don't blame me for what comes next. Re-entering the Dreamlands, Leo found himself in a world completely different from before. He looked ahead. The streets were bustling with steam cabs and crowded with people. He wasn't in the estate anymore. He was in a thriving metropolis. He had seen the city in his dreams before, but it had always been warped and surreal. Scenes shifting abruptly, bizarre events unfolding. A moment's thought was all it took to realize he was dreaming. But the city before him now was a vast, intricate recreation of New Haven. The newspapers even had that day's headlines. Every detail, from the street corners to the alleyways, was rendered with stunning realism. The more Leo looked, the more amazed he became. With nothing better to do, he hopped on a bus and took a tour of the city. He was astonished to find that every building was a faithful replica. He wasn't sure if it was a 1:1 scale, but from what he could see, there were no obvious flaws. The city was a mix of Gothic revival architecture and modern steel and concrete high-rises. In the distance, downtown, countless tall smokestacks belched black smoke into the sky. Leo understood now what was on all those papers. It was the architectural blueprint for an entire city. Ophelia had poured an unbelievable amount of effort into rebuilding a lifelike New Haven for him within the Dreamlands. Leo knew how incredible a feat this was. While she was the creator of this dream world and could conjure a second son if she wanted, complex, minute details were far harder to create than grand spectacles. At the very least, you needed a deep understanding of architecture and construction. Otherwise, the flaws would be obvious. He had to hand it to Ophelia. If she hadn't been born into royalty, she would have made a world-class architect. And he knew exactly why she had gone to such painstaking lengths. He could practically hear her thoughts. If you think the estate is a cage, then I will build you an entire city. A wild bird might beat itself bloody against the bars of a cage. But what if that bird lived in a vast nature preserve? No predators, abundant food. It would be a paradise beyond any bird's wildest dreams. Leo was truly shaken by her obsession. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh. The more you refuse to accept reality, the more you'll suffer in the end. Why are you doing this to yourself? The bus dropped Leo off at the entrance to Blackwood Academy. Just then, coincidentally, a few familiar classmates walked by. Hey, Leo, why are you so late today? Yeah, you missed a whole class. The professor did a surprise roll call, and you got marked absent. Listening to their concerned chatter, Leo had to smile. The script was surprisingly convincing. He almost believed it himself. He was know what new game Ophelia was playing this time. He followed his classmates back to the classroom. To his shock, he found Ophelia sitting at the desk next to his. She was the new transfer student. Long time no see. Miss me? She asked, beaming, dressed in a Blackwood Academy uniform. Leo stared at her, confused. What are you doing here? You don't need to go to school, do you? Ophelia pouted. Why can't I go to school? My brothers and sister are all alumni of the Empire's finest universities. She watched his expression, her eyes narrowing. Father already approved my request. I had myself transferred here specifically to be your classmate. Her pale eyes leaned in closer. What's with that look? You don't seem very happy to see me. No, not at all, Leo said quickly, forcing a smile. Just curious. Whispers erupted from the students around them. A princess of the Empire was now their classmate. Everyone was buzzing with excitement. And so, under the watchful eyes of everyone in the room, Leo spent the entire day as Ophelia's desk mate. After school, on the walk back to the old house, Leo held a cheerful Ophelia's hand, his mind racing. She didn't seem to be avoiding topics from the real world at all. She brought up the bombing, his classmates, Helena, the old house, the sanctuary. She wasn't deliberately hiding things anymore, afraid he might remember. The more they talked, the more confused he became. What was her endgame? This incredibly realistic dream world she'd crafted. Was it really just for fun? Did she just want to experience a shared dream with him, to chat, and to live a completely different kind of life? But the more casual she acted, the more he felt something was wrong. He glanced at the hyper-realistic buildings around them. All of this was being paid for with her own sanity. They chatted and laughed all the way to the front door of the old house. Helena opened the door for them. Brother, you're home early. Huh. The moment Helena saw Ophelia standing beside Leo, her serene smile vanished, replaced by a dark glower. Brother, her? Why is she with you? Even the jealous, twisted expression was acted out perfectly. Leo looked at Ophelia, curious to see how she would handle this. But Ophelia showed none of her usual dominance. She tightened her grip on Leo's arm and hid behind him, looking frightened. "Helena, please, don't get upset." She peeked out from behind him, trying to placate her. "I haven't seen Leo in over 4 years. I just wanted to come by and catch up. Please don't get the wrong idea." Helena wasn't listening. "Cut the crap. Are you trying to steal my brother again?" Her face contorted and several tentacles shot out without warning. "Look out!" Ophelia cried. The black tentacles whipped through the air. Perhaps due to her agitation, the sharpened tips missed Ophelia and accidentally stabbed Leo's arm. "Ow, damn it!" Leo yelped, a real jolt of pain shooting through him. The wound on his arm was deep enough to see bone. While he couldn't be physically harmed in a dream, the sensation of pain was brutally real. "Leo, are you okay?" Ophelia cried, grabbing him with a look of terror and concern. She frantically dug through her bag, pulling out gauze to press against his bleeding arm. But Helena was relentless. Her tentacles lashed out from all directions, as if determined to kill Ophelia. "Helena, stop it! What did I ever do to you?" Ophelia cried, looking wronged as she dodged behind Leo. And so, thanks to Helena's irrational rampage, Leo ended up with even more injuries. His coat was shredded, leaving him looking like a beggar. He clutched his wounds, and a slow burn of anger started to build inside him. "You can kill me, fine, I'll just wake up. But can we skip the torture part?" Seeing her brother's pathetic state, Helena finally calmed down, though she still shot hateful glares at Ophelia. Looking at the unreasonable Helena, and then at Ophelia, whose eyes were filled with nothing but concern for him, Leo thought. He was starting to figure it out. After bringing Ophelia back to the old house, she settled in for good. Her daily routine consisted of going to school with Leo and, under the envious glares of their classmates, being in a relationship. That was right. They were a couple during class after class and during their lunch break, out in the school park. It was the last period of the day. Leo glanced at Ophelia, who was dozing on his shoulder, and sighed internally. All this public affection, day in and day out, without cracking a single book. If this were real life, no professor would tolerate it. Even her brothers, the supposed prodigies from elite universities, couldn't get away with this kind of behavior in a classroom. It was clear Ophelia lacked some common sense. She'd never been to a real school, after all. Besides the daily teen romance drama at school, there was the primetime melodrama at home. After dinner, Leo, sitting on the sofa, heard arguing. The two of them were at it again, over what he didn't know. Of course, Helena was always the one who started it. "Can't you do anything right? What good are you? You're just a burden." Helena was in her usual role, the insanely jealous, relentlessly cruel younger sister. All because Ophelia had accidentally dropped a plate. Ophelia forced a bitter smile. "I've never really done housework before, but I can learn." "Oomph. Learn my ass." Helena scoffed. With her back to Leo, she hissed a low warning to Ophelia. "Don't think you can seduce my brother just because you're pretty. He'll never contain you. He has me, and that's enough." But, Ophelia glanced hesitantly in Leo's direction. Seeing that he was watching them, she lowered her head sadly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Sitting on the sofa, Leo felt like he was watching a soap opera. He was half tempted to look for a remote to change the channel. Were they putting on a little play for him? The sweet, naive girlfriend versus the evil sister? Leo had to laugh. If any of this were actually real, he might genuinely resent Helena's behavior. The act of containment was the source of his power, a core part of who he was. Even as his sister, she had no right to overstep her bounds and make that decision for him. After the big fight with Helena, a heartbroken Ophelia came and buried her face in Leo's chest. He gently stroked her silver-white hair. She was quiet, not complaining. As long as she had Leo, her world was still beautiful. Leo just watched her. By now, he understood her plan completely. But for all her careful calculations, she would never have guessed that he was fully conscious in this dreamland. In the past, in a dream world this indistinguishable from reality, he might have been led by the nose, losing himself completely. But this time, days bled into one another in the dreamlands. His life with Ophelia was calm, but the changes were subtle, insidious. Leo played along with her script. He gradually grew to dislike Helena, and he grew to dislike anyone else who tried to get close to him. His classmates, Captain Raymond's Professor Evelyn. The old house became empty once again. His second year of studies grew more demanding. Leo's life became a simple triangle. Home, school, library. His days seemed full, but imperceptibly. The only person left by his side was Ophelia. Breakfast time. At the long dining table, There was only Leo and Ophelia. She smiled as she worked in the kitchen, bringing him a lavish breakfast. Hurry and eat. We'll go to school together after. Leo silently drank the milk she handed him but didn't touch the rest of the food. He had no appetite. Is something on your mind? Her pale eyes studied him with worry. No. Leo shook his head, his gaze drifting around the empty house. For some reason, seeing him like this reminded Ophelia of the boy she'd seen sitting on the bench in the nursery. All alone, his back to the world, radiating a deep loneliness. It was as if he had no will to live, just a walking corpse. Ophelia's heart sank. She felt a familiar fear creeping in, but this time, she hadn't done anything wrong, had she? She'd given him a fulfilling life, complex social relationships, an entire, real and vast world, and a completely devoted, gentle, and considerate girlfriend. It was a life anyone would envy. What more could you possibly want? Ophelia slowly lowered her head, her eyes dark with exhaustion and a hidden shadow. She had already given it her all. Leo set down his glass, his eyes flicking toward her. She seemed to be fighting to suppress some powerful, twisted emotion. To be honest, she really hadn't done anything wrong. Her plan was seamless and far more ambitious than the last one. A thought drifted through Leo's mind. The most terrifying kind of obsessive love wasn't about cutting off limbs or locking someone away. The most terrifying kind was the one who, while being with you, secretly alienated your family, turned your friends against you, destroyed your career, and dismantled your sanity, all without ever showing a hint of malice. They would only ever be gentle, always by your side. After silently and systematically eliminating everything you ever had, she would embrace your trembling body with the most loving smile and tell you, "Don't worry, you still have me." That was the woman sitting before him. Leo. Ophelia looked up again, her eyes moist. "You haven't been talking much lately. Did I? Did I do something wrong?" Her voice cracked, a perfect performance. That heartbroken expression, paired with her beautiful face, was enough to make any man's heart ache. "No, you're wonderful. How could I be unsatisfied?" Leo said with a bitter smile. Ophelia stood and gently hugged him. "If something is bothering you, you have to tell me. Please don't keep it bottled up inside." She comforted him with a gentle voice. "I'm scared." Leo patted her back, comforting her with a smile. "Don't act like I'm going to do something drastic. I'm not that fragile. That doesn't matter. You have to talk to me every day. Promise me." When Leo didn't answer, Ophelia's beautiful brows furrowed. "Did you hear me?" "I heard you." Only then did she nod, relieved. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "After all, the only one who truly cares about you is me." The next morning, when Ophelia woke up and found that Leo hadn't come out for breakfast, she stared at the empty dining table. Realization dawned, and her face went deathly pale. She tore through the empty house, frantically searching for him. Bedroom, alchemy lab, every room she could think of. The sound of doors being thrown open echoed like thunder. Finally, she found his body in the small room off the balcony. Pale and cold, swaying slightly. A rope made from twisted laundry sheets, a slightly open window, a white curtain billowing in the wind. The exact same ending. A perfect mirror of that first, terrible vision. In that instant, the nightmare that had been suppressed in her heart, the terror that had haunted her for countless nights, played out before her eyes once again. Ophelia's eyes widened in horror. Again. "What? How? I did everything right this time. So why did you still die? What did I go wrong? It can't be my fault. It wasn't my fault." She broke into delirious laughter. It was his fault. It was his fault. Under the weight of her emotional collapse, the dream world began to fracture and disintegrate. The world spun around her. Everything went black. In the southern suburbs, the sky over the estate was thick with storm clouds. Leo awoke once more, his mind groggy. His first instinct was to recall the dream's events, but before he could, his bedroom door was smashed open with tremendous force. A demonic figure burst in. "Ophelia?" Leo stared in shock as she rushed to his bedside, her eyes boring into him. Her appearance was horrifying. Her cheeks were gaunt and pale, her eyes framed by dark, heavy circles and shot through with blood. Her hair was dry and tangled. The beautiful princess was gone, replaced by someone deranged and terrifying. What happened to you?" Leo was genuinely frightened by her state. Ophelia's trembling hands reached out, her fingers frantically tracing his skin. "It's okay. You're okay. It was a dream." Only when her fingers felt the warmth of his skin did the terror in her eyes begin to fade. But then a disturbing, unreadable smile crept onto her face. Hee hee hee. She giggled. It wasn't my fault. It definitely wasn't my fault. There must have been a mistake somewhere. We'll just try again. We'll try again, and it will work. She repeated the words like a mantra, over and over, teetering on the edge of madness.